Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to the finale of What If I Was Reincarnated into My Hero Academia universe as Denki Kaminari. Let the tale begin. Chapter 91. Sides of the Same Coin. Kaminari looked at the man straight in the eyes, not even a little bothered as they talked. The man seemed to be calm throughout the whole thing. Even as he got information on Kaminari, he just smiled. This made Kaminari determined that even as they talked, the man could probably get limited information, most likely physical, like age, weight, height, etc. Every quirk has a limit. Still, just by finding such things, Kaminari doubts that the man can find out his real identity. Quite the nice quirk, even with such limitations. He saw this as quite the useful quirk. So Sheep, now that we have gotten to know each other, can you tell me about the missions around here and which ones are the best paying? The sheep-masked guard only smiles. Well, do you think that sheeps are cool? At the strange question, Kaminari answers with an unsure look behind his helmet. Yeah. The man smiles behind his mask. Okay then, I will tell you about every mission that I know around here and the ones that you should take. He was enthusiastic due to Kaminari being the only other person to say that he likes sheep. Working as a bodyguard in a villain meeting ground was a toxic workplace. After Kaminari got some info in the place, he left the man and went towards where the rich-looking people were. It was behind the gardens, and each of them had drinks on their hands, from whiskey to wine. They came of different sizes and quirks. The only thing that seems the same was the beverages of drinks in their hands and their expensive-looking suits. Also, they all had badges on them, a sign that they are offering jobs, from bronze, silver, and gold, showing the better pay and the dangers of the work. Gold being the highest reward, but with also the riskiest work. Amongst the rich men is a short black-haired man with rectangular glasses and shark-like teeth. He had a silver badge on himself. He looked at anyone that came into this part of the place, and especially tried to see if there was anyone without badges to take jobs from him. But he hasn't had any luck since he is new to this work, even if he looked like he belonged there. A businessman must never act unsure or doubt himself in front of others. Thought the man as his eyes looked at the other CEO and rich people around here. Who would have thought that so many wealthy people would hire villains to work for them? TCH, I don't like it at all how I had to expose myself this way. But middlemen aren't allowed in this place. So as Kaminari, in his dark armor, walked towards him, with clanks of his steps being loud as they hit the ground. He stood just in front of the small man. He didn't even seem to notice as he was deep in his thoughts. Hello there. Kaminari's deep voice rang out. With his armor on, he seemed like twice the size of the small man. He looked up and gazed at Kaminari calmly, even if he was scared shitless. Be calm. This is the first time I have been in front of a villain so close. But I must act calm. After all, no villain would dare and kill me in this place. Thought the man, trying to calm his fast-beating heart even as sweat poured out of his face. Hello. I see that you don't have a badge, so you must be here for work. What kind of mission do you offer? Asked Kaminari in a deep voice. Smuggling, answered the man. I need you to transfer something to Tokyo. The address will be given to you at the back of the package. Kaminari nods, not asking questions about what it even is since it would be unprofessional. So he just nods and asks one final question. What about the pay? He takes out a $5,000 pile of money and gives it to Kaminari while whispering. The other $15,000 will be given after the job is done. The man used dollars as a currency, just so he didn't leave behind a money trail in Japan that could be followed back to him. He then took out a small square package as big as his hand and gave it to Kaminari, which as soon as it touched his hands, understood what it was. This bastard just gave me a bomb casually to transport it somewhere. He then looks at the back and sees that the address is somewhere in Tokyo. Part of the package was a remote-controlled bomb. The man was asking him to put a bomb in the place. Kaminari immediately wondered if the man would double-cross him. After all, he was working with villains. But the man just smiled, which made Kaminari cringe as his smile was just too ugly. Seeing the man smile, Kaminari guessed that he doesn't have good plans in mind, and to this man, he might be just another new and expendable villain. The sickening smile of the man made his stomach churn in anger, but like always, he didn't let the emotions get the better of him. I have never seen someone have such a punchable face. What Kaminari didn't know was that this was an effect of the man's quirk, which released a chemical in the air when he is nervous that makes him unlikable to everyone around him. Kaminari just walks out of the garden and jumps over the wall. As he walks along the forests on the mountains, dodging the normal road, he feels himself calm down. As expected, there are some really weird quirks out there. He was able to guess the gist of the quirk's effects. Quite effective for a businessman who makes deals. Did he just assess the control over my feelings? He sure knew how to hide what he was thinking, though I could tell that he seemed a little nervous. I wonder why. Kaminari's mind working on different methods of why he was nervous and prepped against the worst, which would be a double cross. The man exploding the bomb just as Kaminari gets close to the place, it would make it seem just like a suicide bomb. Slowly, Kaminari uses his electricity to first disable the bomb, and even made the tracker in its signal a different location, slowly of him going to the bus station and getting a ticket to Tokyo, while his real body started entering an acceleration of speed beyond what any normal person would. Also, he deletes himself off the footage of the satellite looking this way and makes it seem like he is just walking normally. As expected of a rich villain organization, they even have their own satellite. Normally, even with his quirk, something like changing footage from a satellite would be impossible. But Kaminari has a supercomputer deep under his old house that handles all of the calculations needed for these abilities of his. Well, I need to take care of some things before leaving Kyoto. Fwish. He disappears, electricity crackling at his previous place where he was. A couple of minutes later, in front of the majestic gates of the building where Kaminari just left, a muscular man with black hair and eyes walked forward with a smile on his face. But in front of the gate were two men dressed in suits, and both were wearing masks, one a pig mask and the other a cow mask. "Oi, who are you?" asks the pig-masked guard. "Ha ha ha." The man laughed. Both of the guards felt nervous around him. "It seems like I didn't inform you in advance." After he said that, the man just walked casually, not even minding and walking past the guards, annoying the one with the pig mask as he puts a hand on the man's shoulder. "Bastard, I asked who the hell are you, and where is your invitation? Killer Queen has already touched you," mumbled the dark-haired man. "Huh." The pig-masked guard is confused. Boom. Boom. But both of the guards explode and their bodies burn off into ashes. "Ha ha ha, I always wanted to say that." The cameras look straight at him, but no alarm sounds out, as if they don't notice anything that is going on. The man smiles and waves at the cameras. "I wish my quirk worked like Killer Queen. That would be cooler. Though it would be weaker, so I don't think I would wish that." And so, the man entered the meeting with no problem and acted as if he owned the place while walking around. Guards surrounded him, each of them wearing a different animal mask, but he just looked around unimpressed. "Kinda weak, all of you." He then clasps his hands together, and the hands, unlike the rest of his body, were pale as snow, the paleness ending at his wrists where there were stitches too, showing that these were not his original hands. 1 hour later, and Kaminari arrived at his destination in Tokyo. Around there, he also solved a lot of cases to add to his daily track record, and the sun was setting, so as he did the calculations, he needed another 3 hours when the tracking signal would arrive here. I will be the hero to also discover the bomb plot. Kaminari didn't want his quirk to be discovered, nor did he want to show how fast he was. So he hid all of these by using the false signal, making the man who gave him the mission feel like he knows what's going on and where he is. While he waited for the right time, Kaminari did some research on the man who gave him the mission, and he is the CEO of an electric company. The bomb now made more sense to him, as Joito, the man who gave him the mission, just wants to take out of his competition, which is sinking his business. By taking out the building and putting a bomb close to it will create panic and damage to the rival company. So it is all just a business benefit, contemplates Kaminari, clutching his bandaged hands as he punches a villain who is about to shoot a woman in a dark alley. And he also takes the woman out of the way of the bullet while tying the man, calling the police, and even leaving his card behind. All of this happened in less than a second, and Kaminari decided to take this as his signal to go off as he sensed the man press the button of the explosion for the bomb. Few minutes before the button press in the other side of Japan, in a wealthy district of houses, Joito is inside his house with his wife cooking dinner. His son had gone to his grandparents. He didn't want his child to be close to him while he did something that he never thought he would do. He looks around, the life of luxury around him, beautiful life and happy family. A man as unattractive as him wouldn't usually have something like this. He even was born poor. He knows how most couples get a divorce due to money issues. So all of this happiness that he felt was, well, because of his wealth. People who say that money doesn't buy one happiness are not smart men. If I lose my wealth, everything will end. I won't even be able to send my son to a good college.
No.
That won't happen. It doesn't matter who I have to sacrifice. I will do it for my family. With those thoughts in mind, he clicked the button of a small remote, his heart heavy as he does this. Click. He thought that he would feel guilty for killing so many people just to achieve his agenda, but unlike what he expected, all of his worries were gone in Joito's eyes, happy that all of his problems will be gone now. I knew that using the villain service was good. Beep, 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 beep. But his heart stopped as he started hearing a beeping sound, and his wife came in with a very familiar object on her hand. Honey, what is this beeping thing? His eyes widened, and he wanted to yell, but before he could, boom, his body was instantly incinerated as the explosion engulfs his body, his wife, and his whole house is destroyed. In a remote village in the mountains, a little black-haired normal kid is playing with some Flash hero toys. When he feels strange in heart, for the first time in his life his quirk activates, allowing him to feel like something bad happened to his family. Tears flow out of his eyes, and he doesn't know why at all. What is wrong? Asked his grandmother as she comes close and hugs the little boy. Mom, Dad, the child whimpered as his tears wouldn't stop. Oh, dear me, are you homesick? Asked the grandmother, worried why the child was feeling homesick as he usually isn't like this. No, but Mom, Dad. So in this world, another orphan was born.
Chapter 92, High School Romance.
Kaminari POV. 1 week passed since I decided that the best course of action would be to kill the man who gave me the mission. While in my identity as the hero, I discovered the bomb and informed the people working in the firm that the man wanted to take it down. They thanked me graciously and did a lot of donations to my campaign, which was a fancy way for rich people to give money to heroes. Obviously, he was expecting me to remember this money, but sadly for him, I will never bother to remember someone like him. I of course took the money. It wasn't a lot in the big picture, just around $700,000. While my sense of money has gotten fucked up, just imagining having had this amount during my first childhood would have saved me so many important things. It might seem a lot in terms of a normal person, but to me who wants to build an actual hero agency after graduation, it's just another drop in the bucket. I also stole a bunch of the money from the man I just killed with his own bomb. I left some since they had a kid, which was a sad thing once I learned of. But I never was a naive enough person to assume that just because I kill a bad person, I won't be harming the innocent one. That would be a foolish wish, but no one needs to know the truth of what happened. Every track has been covered. After getting rid of some more villains and saving a couple more people, I decided to go back to the dorms. Due to constantly using my quirk to speed up my thoughts, a normal day of work feels like forever, so that was one of the drawbacks of using such a useful technique. But I would handle it. All this time gives me time to think. Sometimes I think about my morality of things. I never believed in God, even when I was transported in this new world. Why? Because God gave someone like me a second chance. If he is all-knowing, then he should have known that my presence in this world will bring no one any good. Recently I can feel my sympathy for people start to disappear. I didn't plan for Mirio to lose his quirk. At least in the beginning, I didn't. But I had to do it. He is too skillful, so he needed to be put on a break until the Great War. In around 3 months, All for One should break out of his prison. Together with him will be Shigaraki, who is also imprisoned there. Also the doctor who has gone into hiding there and is using the prison as a cover to do the procedure in Shigaraki. With all these thoughts in my mind, I wondered what could go wrong. It always did. Something always goes wrong. I am no god to know what will go on, but I could be.
No.
I need to resist my greed. I knew the path that I would end up on if I gave up my control. All alone at the top. So what? Is that the end I want for myself? Fuck. I am so divided on these thoughts. Should I give in to my greed? Or keep it under wraps? If I give in, this world wouldn't survive it. But was that so important? After all, since my Hero Academia world exists, others should too.
No.
I was just giving myself excuses. An excuse to start destroying everything in my vicinity for my selfish reasons. It will all end up like my last life, alone and miserable. Wealth and money, but poor in companionship. In the end, my conflicting thoughts rage in my mind. But I always kept my outside image as calm as every day.
Yo, Kaminari.
Izuku's voice rang through from the kitchen as he waved at me. I smiled back and waved too. Izuku, are you trying your hand at cooking?
Yes.
He yelled out in excitement as he went back to making something and watching a video on how to make a cake. I looked outside and saw that the night sky has some stars in it today. I could guess what Izuku is planning to do, probably try and impress Ochako with cake. I knew he would fail terribly if I left him alone. Ochako had friend-zoned the guy, not as bad as I had friend-zoned Mina, but still pretty bad. His eyes were filled with passion, but the passion wasn't going to make the food taste any better. So that was the main reason I decided to approach him and tapped him on the shoulder. Let me help you a little. General POV Kaminari went next to Izuku and offered his help. Izuku was surprised by this. After all, Kaminari is usually so concentrated on hero activities or training. But he wasn't going to refuse Kaminari, who in his eyes should be a good cook. Thanks, said Izuku with a grateful look on his face. I was planning to make a cake. Girls like cake, right? He asked, unsure of this since he isn't as knowledgeable about girls. Kaminari, on the other hand, shook his head in denial. No, a cake is too basic. Do you know what Ochako likes?
No.
He answered, again unsure. This made Kaminari shake his head. Then you need to learn, grunted Kaminari. He then took out a phone. Wait, isn't that mine? Inquired Izuku and checked for his phone. But Kaminari had already started typing something, and it was too late as Izuku goes into an existential crisis. Once Kaminari shows that he had just asked Ochako what food she liked. Well, this now your problem. Whistled Kaminari as he walked off. What? Izuku was terrified of this. Wait, could you guide me some more at least? Kaminari just showed his bandaged hands and said, Nah, I can't mold mochi with these hands. Also, you owe one and try to make them today. What Kaminari hadn't said was that this is a perfect time, since Ochako also liked the starry sky. He knows that Ochako had a crush on him, but that was it, just a crush, and he never planned to do anything with the girl. And if he calculated this correctly, if Izuku tried hard enough, then by the third year at U.A she will get out of the teen crush phase and possibly start liking Izuku. Kaminari went towards his dorm room and Izuku is left in the kitchen section by himself and keeps cooking when suddenly he thinks of Kaminari's hand being covered in bandages and also a certain other person had strange pale hands. As he thought of that, a strange tingling sensation rings on his spine, like a sixth sense. This was a soft awakening of the quirk, but Izuku was not able to awaken it yet, so it was more like a buzzing in his ear which he could easily ignore as he cooked. Nah, Kaminari and Killer Yami look different and have different builds. What useless thoughts, thinking that he and that serial killer. At the same time, Kaminari just entered his room and used his teeth to rip off his bandages. As the bandages ripped apart, there were pale hands with stitches at his wrists. How annoying! He scratched his hands. Every time I use it makes my hands crazily scratchy. He scratched them till blood started seeping out of them, and once he felt satisfied he clasped his hands and all the blood on his hands reconstructs back together. His whole hands are fixed to a perfect state. This was the effect of the quirk in those hands. Chapter 93, Doctor. Time passed by like a butterfly in the wind, flying past Kaminari, and he enjoyed every second of it, well, most of it at least, as he spent most of it playing games on his phone, all of them at super speed while he saved people. Humanity is a race that keeps evolving and full of ingenuity, so Kaminari found a way to make work more fun. So he installed some games played at super speed, and he can play them as his brain works fast. He stood atop one of the buildings and looked down on the people below, walking about their day like nothing was wrong. Being so high up felt like he was looking at ants, but suddenly a small wind blew by and almost made him fall. It's gotten kinda cold lately, thought Kaminari out loud as he looked up at the sky, or more correctly at a satellite just outside of orbit. Lately, he had gotten into the hobby of seeing what the government is up to. His computer used all of the cameras in the city to find any crimes being committed or anything illegal. Of course, due to this method of search, there are some blind spots in his vision of the city, but he can be at any location in less than a second. This was all due to him having access to the cameras and where people are in real time. This way he created a pathway for himself to run on. Of course, he couldn't even see or comprehend where he was going at this speed, so it wasn't a viable method to fight in. He is currently playing some RPG game at super speed on his phone when he got a notification from his computer. It wasn't any crime report, just a reminder. "Tsh, I will have to stop playing now," he said. He was supposed to be working, but he played most of the time since crimes have been happening less and less every day. Nowadays, he mostly just saved cats off trees and helped people who were about to get run over by a car. Ding. Work shift is over. New record. 126 cases solved in one day. Next. Visiting children at the hospital. Damn, I have to do that. Kaminari forgot that he had to even go and do that. He doesn't mind kids being sick. He sees them on TV all the time, but that is just a statistic that except a half-hearted pity will get nothing else out of him. But gazing at children when they are at the depth of despair and they're sick-bodied, begging for life, that just makes his stomach turn. He wasn't some emotionless machine. He wouldn't like to see something like that. But if Kaminari wanted to have his fame build up, so he had to do some things like this every now and then. Ever since he could remember, he would wish that one day he could be as emotionless as he wanted for his goals. If only I could turn my emotions on and off with just a switch. His mind was always working at super speed. So thoughts like this always come to the front eventually. Though it wouldn't take long for Kaminari to arrive at the hospital. He waited for some trucks to arrive first, so he was at the gates of a children's hospital. He had spent a huge amount of money on toys, hoping this would brighten the mood of the dying kids and his own too. But while he waited there, many people noticed him and called over the head doctor. "Hello there, Flash." The head doctor comes out to greet him. He was a tall man with slicked-back white hair and a gentle smile on his face. "I am glad that you came here to visit." Kaminari looked at the doctor and smiled too. "When you asked, I couldn't say no to you, Dr. Canoe." "Ha ha ha," Dr. Canoe laughed once he heard that. "I will be considered a hero myself for being able to get you to come here." The man's easygoing nature made Kaminari chuckle too. "Well, what can I say? I am quite famous now." Dr. Canoe nods at that. He too knew about Kaminari's rise to fame and even had some premium merchandise. He wondered if he could make Kaminari sign them. But doing that felt too rude to ask, so in the end, he asked, "So why don't you come inside?" "I am waiting for some toys. The kids will get them," explained Kaminari with a gentle look on his face. Once Dr. Canoe saw this, he cannot help but feel like the hero in front of him was quite the kind man. "So how have your hands been?" asked the doctor, worried as he looked at the bandaged limbs. Kaminari saw that the doctor was worried, but reassured him by smiling. "Don't worry. I just get this heavy, scratchy feeling every time I overuse them. But generally, it's okay." Dr. Canoe felt relieved at that. He was the one who performed the surgery on Kaminari. He did so because the man in front of him was the only one to find his theory on organ transplant interesting. As a Dr. Canoe doesn't have a good reputation due to his medical book on organ transplant between quirk users, for example, someone with a regeneration quirk. If he donated a kidney to someone with a fire quirk, would that person get enhanced regeneration or kidney improvement? Those were generally good questions to be asked in the science community, but due to the fragile environment of quirks and their regulations, things like this are generally not talked about publicly, so Dr. Canoe suffered a lot of backlash. That should be good then," said Dr. Canoe. "Still though, anything else shows up, you have to tell me since it could turn into a dangerous situation. I still have your original hands, so we can reattach them back if anything goes wrong." He was worried that much was obvious to Kaminari. Dr. Canoe is someone who thinks of him as a very good person. He knows that Kaminari is not a perfect hero in reality, but he also knew no one is. What Kaminari is doing in the eyes of the doctor is all for the greater good. "I feel guilty for the world putting so much pressure on him," thought Canoe. But, sadly, this is how things must be. Denki Kaminari, I will be the shadow to your legend. I will help make you into the symbol of peace that this world needs. Only you are qualified to stand at the top. Kanu is someone who had seen how Kaminari is. Someone like him truly would make anyone feel safe and sleep leisurely in bed, without worry. So the doctor's opinion was quite high of the lightning hero. Plus, he was extremely baffled that Kaminari being able to use Overhaul's quirk like this is nothing short of a miracle in his eyes. It's something that has such a low chance of success that it would be considered impossible, but for some reason, it worked on Kaminari. From his point of view, it was like destiny wanted Kaminari to be able to do this. Also, Dr. Kanu, can I ask a favor of you? Inquired Kaminari, waking up the doctor from his thoughts. Of course, agreed the doctor. As long as it's within my power, I will help you with all of my being. Ha ha ha, Kaminari laughed uncomfortably, feeling that the devotion of Kanu was too high. No need to be so serious, doctor. I just wanted to show you something. Kaminari pointed at his thumb with his right hand, and as soon as he touched it, it explodes into a mess of gore, but almost instantly it is reformed back once again. Kanu's eyes turned wide as saucers in shock when he saw that. He knew just how much potential the Overhaul quirk had. He still remembered the news about the big shot villain, but he never expected Kaminari to gain such control over the quirk in a short time. But he calmed down once he deeply thought about it. Kaminari was someone who was considered talented, and even he couldn't refute that. The kid, by just reading a book once, he will be able to tell you the core of the subject about what was being talked about. Of course, for Kaminari, this was a whole other view on this thing, as he just used his electrification quirk to speed up his thoughts. So technically he wasn't some kind of genius, just that he spent more time on things. So when Dr. Kanu looked at him like he was looking at the future Messiah, it made him even more uncomfortable. Amazing! Yelled out the doctor. Everyone in the hospital heard it, but they ignored him, leading Kaminari to believe that this happened quite often. Simply amazing. To be able to use a new quirk at such a level. Even the original owner would have needed years to reach such levels. Ha ha ha, you are too polite, Dr. Kanu. Politely interjected Kaminari. While 1 week might seem very little time for someone to master a whole new quirk, but to Kaminari, that week can be turned into months, years, decades. Even he doesn't know how much time passes from his view of things. This was a cheat, so to say, as he can learn most things quite fast. But quirk had been quite easy for him to use, as he already knew biology and chemistry at high levels, so that helped with it. Simply, he already had the basics down. Dr. Kanu was about to go on another rant, but Kaminari caught him before he did and put a hand on the man's shoulder. Kanu, you are a great doctor, so I would like to make you an offer. This will make you famous too. Will you accept? Dr. Kanu is confused by this. He isn't exactly an ambitious man and is happy with what he had going on. But since he sees Kaminari's gentle smile, he decided to accept. Sure, I will leave everything to you. Kikik. Immediately Kaminari started laughing, which concerned the doctor with what the young man had planned, and where did he fit in the plans. Chapter 94. If I don't like something, then I need your cooperation on this, I said to Kanu with a mischievous smile on my face while we walked towards the hospital. I truly did. You can't expect someone to be able to do everything by himself. I would never use my Overhaul quirk publicly unless I am in some inescapable and bad situation. This thing must be kept quiet about, and would be my little trump card. When I find myself in an inescapable situation, I can pull out this one. Also, through some self-experimentation, I could make certain parts of my body smaller or bigger, and even directly add the chemicals on my body that made me hard even directly after intercourse. Overhaul truly wasted his quirk by becoming a villain. The kids have been quite excited to meet up with you, blurted the doctor with a happy smile on his face. He truly seemed content at that moment. I can't wait to meet them all. I will show them some cool moves, I proclaimed, lying through my teeth. I didn't like meeting children like this. It reminds me too much of myself and what could have been. I also agreed to do this meeting because Dr. Kanu was just too useful. Usually, I would find someone like him a liability since he knows too much. But then again, I had things in place in case he betrayed me. Of course, unlikely, but it is better to hope for the best while preparing for the worst. Eventually, I would need people that I could trust. Dr. Kanu was perfect for this. someone I could ask to perform a dubious surgery, and he wouldn't ask any questions about it and just do his job. A man of wonders indeed. I didn't know if it was trust in me or lack of curiosity that kept the man so uncaring about my reasons. But I couldn't ask him questions, as he wouldn't ask me either. The trucks full of toys arrived and unpacked over 30 boxes. I offered to go and help, but Canoe said that we could leave to the unpaid interns. Some of them gave me the stink eye, having to carry all of them. I acted like I didn't notice any of that and innocently looked around, blatantly ignoring them. Oh, and as I was thinking about such things, I finally arrived at the hospital, and as soon as I did so, countless kids came out of their rooms to look at me with eyes full of wonder and childlike innocence. Oh, look, it's Flash. Whoa, so cool. Look at his hair, it's so cool. Hick, I have no hair due to cancer. One of the kids cried, which broke my heart. The child was pale, thin, and his eyes had sunken. A nurse was right next to him to help the young child walk. He couldn't have been older than 6. This world can truly be unfair. I was about to go and console him, but another kid came out. He looked like your average bully and said, "Don't worry, Yoji. At least you will get your hair back once you get better." I was born without hair due to my quirk. Bah. The kid surprisingly lightened up the situation, and the kid with cancer also smiled, happy at the words of encouragement from his friends. I was happy as I saw that, but what I couldn't like was how these kids were sick. I just didn't like it. Most people would look at it and think that this is how the world worked while pitying the children, thinking that there was nothing that they could do. Some of the more pragmatic ones would say that this is nature's way of stopping human overpopulation. But I was different. I was no longer the weak man I once was in my first life. This time I had actual power. So with all this power, the next course of action was obvious. When I wouldn't like something about the world, then I will just change it. A simple solution, so to say, one that many had before me. But none of them could back it up. I looked at my bandaged hands and clenched them. I wouldn't try and save everyone in the world. I wasn't that selfless. You can't expect a man to give his life to other people. But I will save all these kids. Why? Because I don't like it. That is all there is to it. If I don't like something anymore, I could change it. A hero? Huh. I guess I can be considered a real one. No matter if it was just to make myself feel better, the result was all that mattered. At the end of the day, I took photos, videos, and autographs with all of the kids, and the strange feeling in my heart had settled down. Plus, when the toys came to each kid's room, it became quite a happy occasion for them. Though I had also gotten every kid some electronic games, that is what they cared about the most. The toys were there for the adults to think differently. Which kid plays with toys nowadays? Phones are way better. General POV after Kaminari spent the whole day with the children. He had a resolute look as his eyes were once again ignited with the flame of ambition as he walked out of the hospital at night with Dr. Canoe. "Doctor, it seems like we have a new duty to take on now," said Kaminari, his eyes having the same glint of greed that was very familiar in his first life. "My decision is clear now. I was hesitant for nothing. I have the power now. So what is the point of having it if I don't use it?" His decision became final. In the end, he decided not to deny himself the greed inside of him. So what if it devoured the world? At least that way he wouldn't regret things and think of what could have been. "Well, as you know, Kaminari, whatever you decide to do, then I will help you," said the doctor with his usual gentle smile. Kaminari wondered if the doctor got this smile from training in front of a mirror. It was just too perfect. A faker can tell another faker. But he decided to not mention anything about it. Instead, he asked, "Dr. Canoe, would you be willing to trade the life of a criminal villain for the life of a child?" Canoe stopped on his tracks once he heard that, and his brows furrowed. The question baffled the doctor. As a doctor, his answer would be obvious: every lie is equal, and he can't take sides. But as a compassionate man, the answer is a resounding yes. Everyone considered villains as the trash of the world, and even if a hero killed one of them, no one would mind that much. "I will think about this." In the end, Canoe couldn't decide immediately. He knew that answering a question like this half-heartedly isn't something one should do with the young man in front of him. Kaminari nodded. He understood how the doctor thought and could guess his thought process on the matter. "Right. I will need to make him think that this was his idea." "Then see you soon, doctor." Kaminari walked out of the gates and casually waved. To use his electrification quirk, Kaminari had spent countless hours studying the biology of the human body. But even then he wouldn't call himself a doctor because he had no deep knowledge of sickness, cancerous cells, or such things. He knew how the human body worked, but not how to treat illnesses. He didn't need that to learn how to better use his quirk, so he hadn't wasted time on it. As he thought of different things, his bandaged hands twitched just at the thought of the situation. I will change things that I don't like, thought Kaminari as he clenched his bandaged hands. Experimentation in real human bodies is needed for me to be able to use this quirk perfectly. At the same time in Tartarus, 500 meters, 1,600 feet, underwater, All for One looked worried as he sensed one of the guards who looked at him through the one-way mirror. That brat. How many people does he have keeping a look on me? Wondered All for One. Every second that he started learning how to use the gift that Kaminari gave him made him feel like he was being watched. Chapter 95. Meeting with the Most Dangerous Man. As he thought of this, All for One gained a feeling of annoyance inside of him. Lately, he had been more and more anxious about the guards who were guarding him. They should have seen him activate his new quirk, yet they acted like they didn't. Just the thought of what Kaminari and he discussed on that day made him want to break out of here, kill Denki and everyone he had ever loved, torture them in front of his eyes, and then torture the hero himself, and help him regenerate until his death comes out of natural causes. But of course, he couldn't do something like that at this time since he would be immediately killed. His body would be riddled with bullets, buried in flames, drowned, and crushed under the sea pressure before he would be able to even blink. Plus, currently, he was under restraints. He couldn't even use most of his quirks. Also, his body wasn't in a good condition. A certain hero made sure of that. As All for One contemplated Kaminari's murder, a dark figure appeared at the back of his mind. Its shape was that of his tormentor's figure, and AFO clenched his teeth in anger. And another feeling that made his heart beat too fast and sweat buckets. That was a feeling that he would never acknowledge that he felt. That fucking kid. AFO's emotions got too riled up, and the sensors started beeping. Beep, 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 beep. This caused a ruckus on the outside of his holding room, which made the guards start injecting morphine and other drugs into his system through the tubes which had been pierced in his body. Even the top villain immediately felt powerless as heavy dosages, enough to kill him, were injected. But luckily for him, he had some quirks in him who would counteract the effects, at least up to a certain degree, just enough which stopped him from dying. The guards weren't treating him gently at all. They were putting enough dosage to knock out a couple of elephants. But even as this was happening, All for One only had one person in mind, and that was Kaminari. He could sense that the brat was planning something, but he still couldn't get a clear picture of it. But he too had his plans, something that would break any of Kaminari's plans that he could think of. You stupid, arrogant brat. We will see how I will repay you. All for One screeched internally, while thinking back to the day when he met Kaminari for the first time in this very room. Flashback to the day of the meeting. All for One was wrapped in a straitjacket with metal belts all around him, locking his hands, legs, body, and even neck, just like usual. Still, he had some tubes inserted in his body and a breathing machine. Even they had countermeasures against anything that he could use to escape. The day was as boring as any while sitting in this deplorable cell. That was until Kaminari came out of the shadows in the room that even All for One bothered to pay attention to. Long time no see, All for One, Kaminari greeted, and by the smile on his face, one would think that he was meeting up with an old friend. Well, I never expected you to be here, said AFO as he turned his head towards Kaminari. How did a weak brat like you even get in this place? Kaminari shrugged. I am not a prisoner like you, little guy. Veins popped in AFO's forehead, feeling unimaginable anger at being treated like that by someone he considered a weakling. But All for One hadn't expressed any of his feelings on the outside. Brats these days have quite the backbone. Kaminari saw this and snickered. Heh, don't get so excited, old man. People might get the wrong idea since I am still underage. Kaminari snapped, and morphine was injected into All for One's system, which made the villain calm down. This was to show the villain who was really in charge here. The 150-plus-year-old man had no way to resist as Kaminari took out a strange syringe. He got close to the villain and was fully on guard as electricity crackled around his body. Ha 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 ha. Here you have me tied up and you still act like a coward. All for One mocked him. But Kaminari didn't pay any mind to the insults, plus AFO wasn't necessarily wrong. Only a fool wouldn't be afraid and on guard to such a dangerous man. But still, Kaminari smirked full of confidence once he injected the syringe into All for One's leg. His eyes expressed a sense of relief and started explaining. What I just injected you with is called botulinum. You will die a painful death even with your toxin resistance quirks. I will give you minutes at best before you are beyond saving. So start working now, old loser. As soon as he said that, OFA's body jerks. He felt like liquid flame was traveling down his spine, heart, and brain. This would kill him very soon and already has made him paralyzed in both legs. Tick, tock, the clock is ticking, old man, said Kaminari as he maliciously smirked at the villain. There is no regeneration quirk that can fix the damage done by toxins like this. So you gotta hurry up, old-timer. Ha 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 ha. Kaminari's laugh vibrated through the room and the lights flickered. All for One's eyes were shadowed as the man looked down, and when he looked up at Kaminari, a malicious feeling descended upon the room. What do you need? Kaminari's smirk became a little strained after that. Even as All for One was tied up, he still felt chills go down his spine. A dangerous man indeed. Better be careful, thought the young hero, now feeling even more pressure than ever. What do you want? Asked AFO. His teeth clenched to hold in a scream. His pride wouldn't allow it. Even though he had already activated quirk, he still felt the pain. This was abnormal, but he saw Kaminari was also sending a small electric shock stimulating his nervous system, weakening the quirk throughout his body. The perpetrator only had an innocent smile on his face. Sorry for the discomfort, old man, but I can't just allow a dangerous person like you to start and feel comfortable. Kaminari was serious about this because he didn't underestimate All for Now even now. Because then you would start being actually threatening, you old fuck. Still, All for One was calmer now. The pain was numbed a little even with the outside interference disrupting the function of the quirk. But All for One also started feeling just how dangerous Kaminari was, and he was cautious too because even as AFO is restricted like this, the young hero was still cautious. So as he saw this, he swallowed his pride. Something that he hadn't done in a long time. One for All started acting in front of Kaminari to stop him from noticing anything wrong with the situation. As he saw this, Kaminari swallowed nervously, took out a silver key, and, clang, released All for One's right hand. Chapter 96, Sucker for Pain. All for One looked at this in surprise, complimenting Kaminari for having the guts to do this. But once he sensed that Kaminari was ready to release an attack point blank, his thoughts went back to him being a coward again. He. All for One laughed. Aren't you being too cowardly? I am just a heavily poisoned old man after all. Move without my permission, even an inch and I will blast your head to smithereens, warned Kaminari emotionlessly. He wasn't willing to take any chances on this. Also, stop fucking around. You don't exactly have a lot of time till your brain turns into mush. Fwish. Kaminari threw a coin in the air, and the electricity was manipulated around it. What he did next shocked even the All for One A, as he took his hand and put it on top of his head. Take it, take my quirk. All for One was even more confused at this. He now had even more questions, but he didn't ask any of them, knowing that Kaminari won't answer any. He didn't know what the young man was up to. Fwash. In that instant, Kaminari's quirk is instantly gone. But even though his quirk was gone, he still smiled confidently and pointed at the electric coin that was still floating in the air. That will shoot straight to your head in around 30 seconds. All for One was shocked at that. After all, Kaminari had left his quirk active somehow even when he lost it. Now give me the metamorphosis quirk, demanded Kaminari. I know that you have it. AFO thought about crushing the kid's skull. He could easily do it due to having it at the palm of his hand. He could sense the young man's actual nervousness now, even though Kaminari tried to portray a confident front. If you kill me right now, you will be instantly dead, and both the location powers, and weaknesses of the Villains League will be revealed, and even where Dr. Cute-Eye will be shown," said Kaminari, looking at All for One straight where his eyes would normally be. All for One doesn't say anything, and gives Kaminari the Metamorphosis quirk. It isn't a relatively strong quirk. It can just allow one to grow an arm, leg, or eye, increase muscle density, and such. Generally very weak as it is mostly able to customize your body, but even that up to a limit. Though it helps All for One build up his body, so it can handle his multitude of quirks. Kaminari looked at the villain dangerously. "Oi, don't give me just the copy of the quirk. Give me the original. Play this one more time and you are dead." All for One feels that the kid would do it for real. His kidneys start failing, and rushingly gives Kaminari the original Metamorphosis quirk. There, it is done. Where is the antitoxin now? Also, can you stop the coin as it has started spinning faster? You gotta finish the job first, insisted Kaminari. I don't have much time left. All for One was panicked for the first time during the meeting as the toxin had now spread to his lungs. He coughed out some dark blood. Well, you will have to hurry then. But Kaminari wouldn't let One for All take any more lead. Give me a copy of my electrification quirk. All for One had to hold back a laugh once he heard that. So he gave Kaminari the requested quirk. Ha 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 ha. Kaminari's laugh was ecstatic once he got it, as if he just accomplished something, and an ecstatic look appeared on his face. Guard, inject the antitoxin. Lightning crackled in Kaminari's hand. The quirk felt familiar but different, but the usage was the same. So he was happy. He stops the spinning coin, who was only seconds away from blasting off All for One's head off. He wasn't worried about the villain learning this trick by seeing it. He would need physics knowledge to do so, and I am confident he doesn't know shit about it, as he doesn't like quirks that are hard to use. Good, very good, said Kaminari, as went outside. But he came back not even a minute later with a briefcase and put it on the ground. I know that you have quite the strong willpower. We gotta lower that a bit. Once he opened the briefcase, inside of it were scissors, a small saw, nutcracker, syringes, Aries, scalpels, etc. It was full of torture tools. Kaminari then takes a small note and reads out loud. I have a lot to do today. This guard's shift only lasts about an hour or so, and since you killed his parents, he won't say anything to anyone, but the others aren't the same. As you can see, All for One, even small things like this. Anyway, in under an hour, I will get 4 of your fingers flayed and removed, have you castrated, also have most of your toes flayed and removed, put some leeches in your urethra, a centipede in your ear, have a rat eat at your testicles. Kaminari continued listing for 5 minutes straight and in the end, added. Also, I will use my quirk to make you hypersensitive. Let's see how someone like you handles pain. Even All for One felt fear at the horrendous torture mentioned there. He looked at Kaminari calmly. Whatever you inflict on me today, I will one day repay you 100x worse. He threatened. Oh, you have some spunk in you, old man. Kaminari complimented him, not at all bothered by All for One's threat. That is the spirit I will need to try and break. I will come here every week or so to make that possible. So please keep up the spirits, old man. I would like to see how the symbol of fear looks like when he feels fear. Let's see if you are as good at taking it as you are at dishing it out. And so the hymn of pained shouts rang through the most dangerous man's cell as he shouted his throat out. Flashback Yandy. All for One's body shook every time he even thought about the torture that he went through. He saw Kaminari in his nightmares every night since then. He was the buggy man. He was the devil who tortured him every week the guard was on duty. He doesn't know what Kaminari's goal was in all of this. Or maybe it was some sick joy that the young man got from seeing such a powerful man cry in pain like a child. Or maybe there's no reason and he would just do it for the sake of doing it. Due to the regeneration quirk that All for One had, it allowed Kaminari to go well and beyond as long as he wouldn't destroy his brain. He even made All for One eat a part of the brain that would regenerate. Every week Kaminari came back better skilled with using his tools of torture. By now it felt like an expert sculpture of flesh working on a new piece of art. The flesh was carved out like at a butcher's, but the torture wasn't only physical, but also psychological as he forcefully made All for One eat his flesh. But All for One had his strategy on handling Kaminari. He could turn off Kaminari's copied quirk whenever he wanted. But he never even expressed that possibility. He wanted to see the face of terror his tormentor would make once he realized that after he broke out of this hellhole. That was the only thought keeping his mind intact. But all of this torture also had another bothersome side effect. All for One felt physically sick every time he used Kaminari's electrification quirk. It wasn't a physical problem. The quirk reminded him of Kaminari, so only rarely would he use it, even though the guards didn't seem to mind whenever he used it. Still, the world's strongest villain had another thought on his mind. He now had extreme hate for Kaminari. He would give everything up just to make him feel the pain he felt during those tortures. Creak. Suddenly the cell door opened and All for One immediately lost all motivations of revenge, and there was Kaminari, looking at him and smirking like an excited child at a candy shop. Hey, there, how has my old potato head been doing? All for One's body involuntarily shook like a naked man in front of a snow blizzard. But while his body was locked in fear, on his thoughts he cursed Kaminari and consoled himself that he had to wait only one more month when Shigaraki would also gain All for One. I only need to wait a little more. Then this little monster shall experience despair that he has never felt before. Oh, still not talking? Questioned Kaminari with a disappointed look on his face. Well, I will have to make you scream a lot more to console my hurt feelings now. I just found a species of flesh-devouring leeches. That should be a good thing to place on your newly regenerated genitals, right? No. Stop, begged the villain. I didn't hear you, said Kaminari as he put on his surgical gloves. So say it louder. Let me hear your passion. Show me you really wanted, old man. Kaminari's smirk widened even more. This wasn't about just physical torture. He needed more psychological torture and psychological pain from the villain. Chapter 97. Killer Queen. Ever since Eri had come to live in the dorms with the other students, she felt like Class 1A was truly amazing. Everyone always liked and spoiled her, especially the girls. But she also saw just how hard it was to be a hero, even one who was just studying to be one. Everyone was busy every day. She could see that they were all working hard. Though there are always at least one or two people in the dorms, and they keep her company while they are cooking, relaxing, or doing homework. She was always curious why everyone worked so hard, and since today Mirio visited her, she was just watching teach Ijiro some hero poses when she finally got the courage to ask, why does everyone work so hard? Both Mirio and Ijiro stop. The former stands up and smiles. His blue eyes shined in a heroic light. Because I want to save 10 million people. Ijiro smirked with pride. I think that you were talking about Class 1A, right?
Eri notes egregiosly.
Yes, causing Mirio to look down with a depressing aura around him. But he immediately becomes energized the next second. Well, Ijiro was a little embarrassed to say it out loud, but in the end, he decided to explain, it's all because one guy in our class will never stop trying so hard. He is also so stupidly strong, but he still tries so hard. Well, we have to work so hard so at least the distance between us doesn't widen to the point where there will be no need for us anymore. Though Kirishima didn't say the real reason why he was trying so hard. A friend isn't someone who looks at his friend's back. We are someone equal. So to be worthy of your friendship, Kaminari, I will catch up to you. Huh. Mirio was shocked by Ijiro's words. The red-haired student seemed to fully trust Kaminari being able to completely make the heroes a needless existence. I do admit that Kaminari is someone strong, but outlining all of the other heroes isn't something possible. I understand, said Eri, nodding in with a knowing look. Kaminari, San is amazing. One time I saw him fly and go like, fum, boom, and wabam. Eri did some silly poses as a demonstration which made the two guys smile, and she smiled back too. Heh, it seems like there is some news about me. Suddenly Kaminari was there sitting down on the couch, and the TV was already on, surprising some of the visitors to the dorms. Huh. Mirio looked at him surprised. He seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Fwish. Suddenly he disappeared again and came back in a split second. Sorry, some dog was about to get run over by a car. This was his usual daily routine as he would come here, and then the next second would blitz somewhere else. It almost seemed like he was doing multiple things at once. This fascinated Mirio and Eri, while Kirishima was already used to it, so this didn't make him even surprised. This was the reason why everyone tried so hard. Kaminari was always working hard that it made everyone else seem inefficient. Mirio was enamored how he did things, and as the news played on TV, Kaminari just seemed to blitz through and come in with a suit and different change to clothes. Guys, I have an interview in 5 minutes. Do I look good? Mirio didn't know what to say since he was a little overwhelmed. Kirishima gave his friend a thumbs up. You are good to go. Almost as good looking as me. Okay, meaning I look way better than you. Kaminari gave back a thumbs up too. Look at this station as I am about to rock the world. Fwish. Once more he disappeared in an instant. Well, Mirio drawls on, not knowing what to say next after seeing this scene. He seems to be quite energetic. The next time they see him is 5 minutes later as a female reporter appears on TV. She is quite good-looking with Western features with blonde hair and glasses. It made her look quite cute. She also seemed strict and nice at the same time. She was a foreign journalist, that was clear. And the smile she gave made everyone feel a special feeling born within their hearts. She had that mature but at the same time young charm to her that confused everyone. Lightning Hero, Flash, it is quite nice to have you here. She greeted the star guest for the day, and all the males watching this were jealous of Kaminari as he got to talk to such a woman. Kaminari Povey smiled at the bitch in front of me. She had done some reporting about some commercials that I did, and that as a hero, I was using my image to make money. I did, of course, but her report was mostly to get clicks on her channels. Pretty petty of her to attack me there. I would make her disappear out of the face of the planet, but that wouldn't be too favorable. Killing her would be useless. Plus, from what I know, her quirk allows her to make others feel angry due to the hormones that she released from her skin. I had to be careful because China, America, and some other countries like that had some very powerful defense systems, and entering such deep databases on their people's quirk registrations with just my electrification quirk might get me discovered and put on a hit list. I could fight against villains, but governments are different. They could just put poison in my drink that I wouldn't even know about until I suddenly had a heart attack. Of course, there are many other ways that would happen. Maybe some quirk like Aizawa stops my quirk and suddenly my head is popped like a balloon. Governments are a different kind of danger from villains, and with all my power, it will only make the whole world fight against me if I go into conflict with them. It would be a death wish no matter the power I had. I was also nowhere near good enough to be able to use overhaul to heal damage to my heart and not kill myself. So poison of certain types is still able to kill me. I knew my weaknesses better than anyone else. The woman looked at me with a continuing gentle smile on her face as the cameras started rolling. Hello there. Nice to see you, Kaminari Denki. Never thought I would meet the hot new celebrity hero. This bitch, she just said my real name on TV. She is just asking for me to get jumped in real life and villains knowing my name. That was when I also felt my heart beat faster and my adrenaline jump up. My brain was feeling reckless and I wanted to yell at this bitch for calling out my name, knowing how dangerous this could be. I am good, Miss Jackson. Answering her with a smile on my face wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, but I pulled through. How about you? Coming all the way here from America must have been a tiring journey. Ha ha ha. Thank you for worrying about me, Flash. She moved her hair behind her ear and looked at me suggestively. In just this one move, she had shown her professionalism as she had moved her face in a position just outside of the camera shot and gave me a wink. But as a journalist, I am quite used to something like this. I can only hope that my Japanese is good enough. This was all the journalist playing her manipulation along and the slight twist of her lips, showing me that she was doing all of this intentionally. Now she was intentionally trying to piss me off. My heart was angry and wanted to lash out at her, but my mind was still calm. She might think that she was the one holding all of the cards currently, but she had no idea who was the one holding the power here. I will show that to her later. Of course, I don't doubt your professionalism, Miss Jackson, I said while smiling at her. There was a reason why I wanted this interview to be live. Because if it wasn't, then I would pretty much have lost already due to the ability of the team to edit the video. That would make me look bad and stupid even if I was Einstein. Oh, she gave a coy look. Are you trying to hit on me, Flash? No. I shook my head. Sorry, ma'am. I am into girls around my age. I know what she is after. And once someone knows that, then they can also play the situation in their favor. But she doesn't understand that it isn't what she wants that matters, but what the studio wants. They want views and clicks, so they will use any clip with conflict on it. And even if she looks like a fool, they will still put it up because Miss Jackson was easily replicable, but she probably wouldn't know that. I could see the uncomfortable shake of the hand that she did. Instinctively, she kept out of the camera view, but I could see through her like an open book. General POV, "Oh, I see," said Miss Jackson, clearly irritated as Kaminari insinuated that she wasn't young enough to be of any interest to him. He just called her a hag in a polite way. This fucking kid. Just wait and see, you brat. You will croak under the pressure. I know just how hard you want to hurt me. No one can resist my charms. She was quite angry at this. Chapter 98. News Interview. Miss Jackson knew what she was doing, but seeing the gentle smile on Kaminari's face pissed her off. It made her feel powerless in this situation, but mostly because it reminded her of her father. Damn, why did I have to start remembering that guy again? She complained internally. Kaminari's smile and calm demeanor brought out some repressed memories from within her. Memories of her past always bothered her, since her quirk causes the people who she shoots her invisible anger hormones that come out of her skin. It will make them rage. Of course, for most people, it was different dosages. Some need more, and some need very little to just blow off on people. Her father was one of the people who could resist it very much. Before she knew what her quirk was, she would try using it on her father, but it did nothing on him. So technically she was quirkless, on paper. Or at least that was what she thought. Since the CIA and FBI secretly monitored celebrities, just in case they aren't using some super strong mind control. So the government knew her quirk even if she didn't tell them. Anyway, under the effects of her quirk, her father acted normally and smiled normally for a whole year. She still doesn't know if it was because her quirk was weak at that age or what. But one day her father brutally beat her mother to death right in front of her and cried afterward, turning himself in. It didn't take long for her to understand what was going on at the time and what her quirk was. She went on later. Almost 2 decades later, she finally came to terms and visited her father in prison. He was haunted by what had happened, and once she had told him the truth. The man felt that guilty that he had killed his wife, but more so that he had done it in front of his daughter. He had already spent almost 20 years in prison and only told his daughter to use her quirk secretly to further her career and not waste all that potential for a man like him. This was the least that he could do as a father, that was what he said. So Miss Jackson felt like it wasn't only for herself that she wanted to be famous and have money, but her father too, since he was the one rotting in prison for her. A man willingly gave his life away for his daughter to be successful. This was the ultimate sacrifice in her eyes, and she would do anything to have this come to fruition. But even with all of that, as she looked at Kaminari's eyes, his eyes were yellow like that of a snake. A chill went down her spine as she swore that she saw his pupils turn into slits for a second. But she kept her calm. He felt like a very dangerous man, the kind of man who would slit your throat with a gentle smile on his face. It terrified her just how he was unaffected by her quirk. He must have seen my comments about his recent commercial, calling him selfish and all that. So he should already be angry, and my quirk has been strengthened now that no normal person should be able to resist for more than 10 seconds, thought Miss Jackson. But she started feeling even more nervous as she asked him some questions about relationships, school, and some war that was happening on the other side of the world. Something that no kid his age would know. But he answers casually with a serious look. In my thoughts, I believe that it is all due to misinformation. Both sides think of the other as monsters. People sometimes forget that we are all humans, and that the enemy is not some emotionless killer. Kaminari's explanation was hitting straight at the roots of the problem and how most people fight out of desperation. But what scared Miss Jackson even more was the way his eyes moved. The way he seemed to be looking straight through her, as if he already knew everything about her. No, that can't be. My mind must only be playing tricks on itself. The reporter reassured herself, but as she looked at Kaminari, she saw him smirking slightly, causing her to feel a chill go down her spine. The smile seemed normal, but it made her instincts jump up. This all happened in a split second, but everything she saw only made her even more nervous. No, I must calm myself, There is no reason to feel so nervous in front of a kid. So tell me about the recent controversial commercial? She asked with a slight tilt of her head. Controversial? Wondered Kaminari with a curious look on his face. Only you seem to think that it was controversial. I have you now, brat. I bet you couldn't resist that money, thought Miss Jackson. But contrary to her expectations, Kaminari's smirk widened slightly. Well, isn't it controversial? She asked. Some say that you earned more than $500,000 from it, and that all show a little more humanity from your perfect vision of a hero. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, of course. Of course, Kaminari nodded, his face serious now. But doesn't it seem a little disingenuous of you to assume that? Assume what? Wondered Miss Jackson as she stared him down. I have you now, little rat. Let's see how you try to dig yourself even deeper. You are assuming that I took all of this money for myself. He criticized her with an angry look on his face. Though his rebuttal was a little unexpected, since he has already shown anger, then it meant that her quirk was now taking its effect. Oh, you didn't? She asked in a high-pitched voice, trying to enrage him even more. But from what my team has investigated, that you have earned quite a bit from that commercial. Well, Kaminari started. First, I don't think it's any of your business how much money I make, since that is private information and dash. But my job as a journalist is to find out what people want to know, she said, interrupting Kaminari. He raised an eyebrow at that. So are you going to interrupt me for the rest of my talk, or are you going to let me talk? Because if you want to say something, say it right now. I waited for you to finish what you had to say, so I hope that you have at least the same respect for me to do that. So, do you have anything to say? That was when Miss Jackson immediately understood what was going on here. Kaminari acted like he was angry, giving her a sense of relief. But that was all false, as his logical actions tell another story. No, please go on. Well, if you had done some simple research, then you would know that all of the money that I had earned from it has gone to different charities, and some toys I bought for some children's hospitals. But of course, you guys consider something that as long as I don't make a big deal about it, then it didn't happen, said Kaminari, his demeanor calm and his eyes cold as ice. Please, next time do some more research before saying something like this. The rest of the interview went by as chaotic as it could. Miss Jackson tried to make a comeback, but it failed as each of Kaminari's answers was well thought out and planned. The general look of this interview would be how a bright young hero Kaminari was trying to be put down by a greedy news organization. Of course, Miss Jackson was immediately dropped from the network and the station went into self-defense mode, and how that wasn't their intention and they are having an investigation on what went on, and that they even discovered that Miss Jackson was using her quirk illegally. This fooled the other people. But Kaminari knew for sure that the network knew that she was using her quirk even if she said nothing about it. But he let it go since he was after all just another innocent and misinformed young boy who didn't know anything about the records the government keeps on its citizens. Dr. Canoe looked at the news from his hospital. Kaminari was next to him. They were both the doctor's office, which was very minimalistic. Very smart answers, complimented the doctor. I can't say that I would have done anything differently even if I knew the answers and thought about them. Kaminari only smiles at this as he had a teacup in his hand. He gently takes a sip out of it. Well, some people have instincts for these things. Never thought it would be so good, though. Ha 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 ha. The doctor laughed out loudly. The greedless hero. It is quite the ring to it, don't you think so? Canoe was very happy for Kaminari. In his eyes, the young man is perfect for things like this. Anyway, doctor, how has the progress on the thing been going? Asked Kaminari, now with a serious look on his face. Canoe shook his head disappointed. I have been running tests ever since I have accepted your offer. But except you, no one else has even come close to the success. Kaminari sighed at that in disappointment. Well, it can't be helped. He then took out a USB and passed it to the doctor. Be careful with this one. It has some very classified information. It even includes the research on artificial humans, the Nomus. Canoe was shocked by what he heard. Wait, where did you get something like this from? Kaminari smiled mysteriously. Well, from someone that I plan to erase, of course. Chapter 99. Evolution. Canoe POV. Ever since I could remember, I had always been just another average guy. There was nothing special about me. Maybe what was special was that I was so average. But my mother, she died while I was in college. Ever since then, I couldn't help but feel empty. I had no family for myself. I always wondered what was my purpose in this world. So I decided to give it my all and become a doctor who understood the world. Sadly, my ideas were looked down on and suppressed due to the civil unrest, though it seemed like everyone had calmed down since the quirks started appearing. There are still radical things below the surface. That the Liberation Army is proof that things haven't settled down or anything like it. They have just become dormant. I walked along the hospital hallways as some images of what used to happen back then. People used to think that people with some evil-looking quirks were possessed by the devil, and some were even burned alive by very religious families. Sometimes humans can truly be extreme in their ways of things. As I walk along the hospital, I smile and greet the nurses and nod at the kids politely. The kids had hope in their eyes, and this made my day. It's been 2 weeks since I reported to Kaminari about my failures, and since then he took a more hands-on approach which had proven to be very effective, and even helped him with the research due to the usage of the quirk. He truly is the perfect existence, and maybe this was why the world made me. This is my purpose, to help Kaminari Denki reach his full potential. Since I got the secret research on how to create Nomus and the numerous secret government human experiments, since then I have been able to create over a dozen creatures similar to Nomus. Sadly, I don't know how to put a program that will keep them obedient. But it doesn't matter, truly. None of them would even be a match for Kaminari, even if there were hundreds of them. So essentially, they wouldn't be useful at all either way. Still though, as I have spent so much time with Kaminari, I have gotten a glimpse into his plan. No, not his plan, more like just how much control the young man had of his surroundings. He is a clear-headed young man who knew that he wasn't invincible. I knew best since I saw just how much surveillance he kept on one of his teachers, making sure that no blood from that teacher is taken to be cloned by the villains. But it wasn't just in Japan. Even internationally, I have seen just how far his influence spreads. I saw that the medical equipment we needed to experiment on the villains he got from Germany and some other chemicals from America. I never asked if he got them legitimately or by the black market, but I do know that he erased his trail very clearly, because we have some military-grade equipment on our hands, and no one has even been investigating us. Some news had been going around as me and Kaminari combined our efforts and used his overhaul quirk to cure some of the most incurable diseases in the world, some types of cancer, brain tumors, and some other incurable illnesses. The overhaul quirk was truly made for medicine, and Kaminari is an expert user of it. He kills the person and then revives them, but without the tumor/cancer in their body. Of course, we were able to reach so far only due to a mountain of human, villain, corpses. After all, for people like us, nothing came for free. But now, with Kaminari's mastery over his overhaul quirk, he can easily heal people. Obviously, this was all secret from the eyes of the public, and most think that I am the one who did most of the work during surgery. Kaminari didn't try to rectify how people saw it. I suspected that he wanted to hide what he could do. It was his hidden card. But I have also started noticing something else. Kaminari's body has been getting buffer and buffer as he has taken some of the Nomu muscles and planted them inside himself. I do not know what he was trying to do, but it's working somehow. His muscles now regenerate better. Why would he want so much power? I know how risky it was for him to do something like that. What is he waiting for? I doubted that my questions would ever be answered, but I did know that as long as I continued supporting him, I would learn of them one day. I look outside of the hospital from one of the windows and see a crowd gathered there to thank me for saving their children. Oh right, today was my birthday. I just turned 68 years old. Heh, just one more year for the perfect age. General POV while Dr. Canoe was having a jolly time, enjoying his life. In U.A., Aizawa was disturbed by something as he walked to his classes. Why do I feel like I am being watched? Thought Aizawa. As he looked around in suspicion, he didn't like it at all. But in the end, chalked it up to superstition, since inside U.A. and no one is going to be watching him except Nizu. What he didn't see was the camera turning just slightly to look at him directly. At the same time, Kaminari was in an undisclosed location in Kyoto. He was in a lab-like building with a metallic bed and different Nomu parts scattered around the place in capsules filled with green liquids. It wasn't the normal Nomu parts who were there, no. Its skin was yellow, and it seemed to be constantly moving around and very slowly trying to regenerate. This is the electric Nomu. In a way, it was Kaminari's clone forcefully injected with many quirks and turned into a Nomu. I will try taking on those parts inside of me slowly, one by one, and see if the fusion works or if I will slowly start losing my appearance and mind. Kaminari contemplated this very carefully, but he knew that as soon as he started sensing something irregular, he could just use overhaul and get rid of the foreign substance. So Kaminari ties up one of his arms on the table and gets a small vial of fleshy liquid. In theory, everything should be okay, since the Nomu and he had the same type of blood and DNA. Of course, the Nomu's cells die quicker due to having been put into a hyperactive cell division to create a body from just the amount of blood the Villains League got from Kaminari. So due to that, a perfect clone can never exist. There will never be another Kaminari no matter what, because even if miraculously they got all of Kaminari's DNA to create a clone, and the clone could live long enough, as much as a normal human, then it wouldn't be able to reach anywhere near Kaminari and would have to watch anime from his previous life and learn physics, biology, and microbiology to be able to reach Kaminari's current level. Even then, it would need my enlightenment to how I got the way I did and have the experiences I had. Pretty much, the chances of such a thing happening are so low that it would be safe to consider them impossible. Slowly, the vial of fleshy blood is ingested through the tube, and it enters Kaminari's body. Let's see now if everything will go okay. Hopefully, this will work, because I desperately need it. Kaminari felt nervous at this since these kinds of experiments were always dangerous and had a high probability of fatality. He activated and touched his arm, trying to fuse his flesh with the electric Nomus. Ugh. Chapter 100. Hiding Behind Cloth. As the Nomu's flesh settled over in Kaminari's body, his skin started turning yellow up to his elbow. He looked at his arm and tried to use to reconstruct his skin. But once again, it seemed unaffected and it was remade into yellow. At least it overtook the usual paleness on his hands. But Kaminari was surprised once again as he saw that the stitches in his wrists started to hurt and feel scratchy. So he took one out and was surprised to see that the small stitching holes was slowly healing up. Not too fast, but it was still visible to the eye. Amazing! I have seen this countless times when it happened to the Nomu, but feeling it for myself is weird. Kaminari was enamored by this, and he doesn't mind as blood hits the white shirt that he was wearing. He does another small cut in his other hand to test if the regeneration spread through his whole body, and it did. Sadly, he was left with yellow skin up to his elbow, so Kaminari had to cover the whole arm with bandages. As long as no one notices, then it won't be a problem. Disfiguration? I don't mind such things. After all, I have resolved myself for power, and as long as it doesn't hinder me, disfigurement is but a small price to pay. Plus, it isn't necessarily too bad as I can change my appearance with my metamorphosis quirk if I wanted to. Contemplated Kaminari, weighing the pros and cons of each of his moves. At the same time, while Kaminari was doing his experiments, others were also doing their own. In a dark room under Tartarus prison, Dr. Garaki looked at his latest test subject with glee. Shigaraki was in a capsule and sleeping. It was truly something that he hadn't seen in his life. Ha 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 ha. He laughed like a madman. How peculiar. Tamura, you will surpass even All for One with how strong you are getting. Shigaraki's body convulsed slightly once he heard that. Since he had been captured, Dr. Garaki had changed his identity and decided to do the experiments inside Tartarus prison. No sane man would ever do something like this. It was all thanks to some hypnosis and good old hacking against the cameras. Some bribes here and there, and everyone looks the other way. But Dr. Garaki played with his mustache as he thought of something else. Denki Kaminari, that brat is too troublesome. The clones have proven to be ineffective, and we no longer have access to his blood since I already used it all. TCH, what a troublesome brat. I will need to visit All for One cell. This is gonna be such a pain. The security there is tight as always. While the doctor had gotten some access to the prison, he knew the risks it had with just taking one step out of Shigaraki's cell would get him instantly killed. But before he could even think of escaping this prison and having a mass breakout from it, he knew that Kaminari had to go. The young man held too much power, both physically and mentally. As long as he existed, then no one would ever fall to the villains. nor would they feel fear of them. 2 weeks passed and nothing big happened publicly. Kaminari was slowly fusing more and more with the clone Nomu that had previously attacked him. Due to doing that, he had gained the quirk and also 2 amazing abilities. But due to all that, it put a very hard strain on his body, so he had to use on himself every other day, as his bones, veins, heart, and lungs were regularly crushed, and the body took quite a toll due to the quirks. Of course, this was all very hard on him. But for the cameras, he always put on a happy face and smiled. Being the image of power and health, due to now getting the quirk, he had a constant map of everything around him in 360 degrees and over 20 kilometers. This reminded Kaminari of the Byakugan from Naruto, except that this quirk offered quite the better range and had no blind spots. He deduced that this must have been the reason why the electric Nomu had been able to move at top speeds and still see where he was going. This would also be useful to Kaminari, as now he too didn't need to hold back, especially since his hero costume had been modified and now had a completely yellow bodysuit and face mask, though he still kept the easily retractable red cape just in case he had to fight against quirks like Aizawa's. This was all done for a reason, to hide the iron sand that he covered his body in, mostly because of the friction, as when Kaminari started moving at such high speeds, his body would melt off if he wasn't careful. Izuku POV: we were all having a little party, and when I saw Kaminari's hands, which were now bandaged, I couldn't help but still feel something nudging me at the back of my mind. All Might had said that it was just the quirk reacting, but why would it go haywire whenever I got close to Kaminari? It felt like a prick on the back of my head. Even the most dangerous villains that I met during my patrols, they felt nothing compared to him. All Might always said that was never wrong, and I haven't told him about this. But I have started suspecting Kaminari about some things. If only I could look under his bandaged hands, then I would be more confident in him not being anything suspicious. As I was thinking that, I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked at it and saw that it was a bandaged hand, Kaminari's hand. "Hello there. Did you make any lemonade?" he asked me innocently with a smile on his face. I didn't know why, but Kaminari's question for some reasons made my quirk go crazy. It was as if someone smashed my skull with a hammer from the inside. "Oi, Izuku, are you okay?" asked Kaminari worryingly as I started breathing heavily, and my heart felt like it wanted to jump off my chest. At that instant, the pain in my head stopped as if it never existed, to begin with. I looked up, and Kaminari's worried expression made me realize that I had fallen on the ground.
Yeah.
"I am okay," I told him, trying to stand up nonchalantly, but failing at it. I couldn't help it as my eyes wandered towards his bandages. Like always, Kaminari was too sharp and noticed it. "Oh, don't worry about these. It just seems like I keep hurting my hands lately. Haven't you gone to recovery, lady?" I asked him with a serious look on my face. He looked at me back calmly too. For a split second I swore that I saw something dark appear from Kaminari's yellow eyes, but that must have been just my imagination. "Ha ha ha, that would drain too much of my stamina," Kaminari joked, and that made me even more suspicious. "Can I see your injured hands?" I blurted out without even thinking. Chapter 101. Enemy in the Dark. As Izuku asked me to look at my hands, I contemplated killing the young man soon. But that thought was dropped instantly. I knew that was a very bad quirk against me, since it would allow Izuku to sense my maliciousness. That is a weird request, I tell him, but whatever. As I started pulling out my bandages, I showed him my hands. They both had their healthy color and had some scars and deformities amongst them. Izuku cringed in shock. Sorry about that. I didn't know dash, ha ha ha, don't worry about it, I reassured him, slapping him on the back. What I just did was use overhaul quirk and metamorphosis to create a healthy color to my skin and injuries that wouldn't be healed so fast. I covered my hands with bandages and had a polite smile on my face. Even as I thought of killing the guy in front of me, I tried to have my mind wander around to not alert him of my intentions, but by his expressions, I can tell that it was not working. What an amazing quirk, especially since it was powered up by One for All. What a shame. I wanted a quirk like that. It was a better version of my auto-dodge sequence. It can sense danger from so far away, it could even sense potential danger in the future. But he was still useful. Killing him wouldn't be beneficial. Plus, it doesn't matter what Izuku says. After all, I am the shining light of the world, and if he said anything it would be seen as just another petty rant out of jealousy. Manipulation of information is the strongest kind of manipulating available. A great man once said that people only know just what they are informed with. People are manipulated just when they want to think that they are not manipulated. After all, opinions can only be formed once a certain amount of information is given on something. As long as someone says something often enough, then it becomes the truth. Still, though, I will need to keep my image clear and create a cult mentality sooner than planned. Well, it doesn't matter. My plan had never been too concrete due to unexpected situations like this could arise at any time, and the plan can be easily adjusted. There is no perfect plan, and the worst enemy of a good plan is the thought of a perfect one. I can't predict every single thing, but I can easily adapt to different situations. Still, I keep the gentle smile on my face and want to spend some time with the others. Today is a day of celebration. Because ruin is coming soon, then I will have enough time to worry about such things. At the same time, in Tartarus, inside the dark halls, the light flickered, something that never usually happened. All for one walked down them. Guards charged at him, but they exploded in a blast of flesh and gore. Ah! A guard screamed out as he looked down at his tarnished lower body. Please, man. I got a family. All for one doesn't say anything. Veins pop all around his body. He was angry. Very angry. His rage was unstoppable. Pop. The guard's head pops like a balloon. Bastard. You were laughing when you saw me tortured and scream like a pig. AFO said calmly, Kaminari Denki. His shout of anger rings through Tartarus, but there was no other person to hear it. Shigaraki and the high-end Nomu had already killed them all. But as All for One said the name of his most hated enemy, his body involuntarily shook in fear and a dark persona of Kaminari appeared in his mind. The countless torture that he had gone through had left a sign in both mind and body. The torture wasn't only physical, but also mental. The feeling of powerlessness, desperation, pain, shame, and many more feelings. For a man like him who had been at the top of the world for over a century, the feeling of powerlessness truly hurt his mentality. Sensei. Shigaraki appears from one of the dark corridors. Though dark, they can still perfectly see what was going on. Are you okay? All for One calmed down once he heard that. He clenched his hand and looked up. Let's get out of here. I need to meet up with someone and show him what it means to be the symbol of fear. Only the next day, as was it noticed that people had escaped from Tartarus. All for One, with the help of the doctor, had set everything up so it wouldn't be noticed. Since Tartarus had a status repost every hour, it was hard, but doable due to all the quirks that All for One had made. The original plan was to hit Tartarus from the outside and inside, but they had to be careful as lately a lot of things had been said about villain execution laws. They didn't want to test the government to throw a nuke at them if the government decided that the villains are too dangerous to let out. Even All for One wasn't confident in handling a nuke. Even if he was in the vicinity, he would be killed by the radiation. It might seem like a cruel thing for the government to do something like that, but the world is ruled by humans, and doing things based on emotions is pretty much the norm for them. Plus, if Japan lets out a hero that could fight against All Might, then some other countries like America and so more won't be happy. They might just send the nuke themselves if they learned of it. Of course, the news can be adjusted to say something along the lines of villain suicide and terrorist attack. Everyone would believe that because that is the information that will be put up online and in the media. Still, since the escape already happened, no one can now start nuking cities and hope that All for One was there. Kaminari looked at this scene from his dorm room as he laid down in his bed. His minimalistic room was the only thing that made him seem abnormal. Even if one looked at his room, they wouldn't be able to tell what he was like. Did he like heroes? Books? Games? Music? One couldn't tell at all. He was like a puzzle that no one would know even existed. I thought that after all that torture, All for One would act irrationally and attack me head-on, complained Kaminari internally. While on the outside he looked calm, he was seething internally. It seems like Plan B will have to be put in place. A hidden enemy is the most dangerous kind. His original plan was to draw All for One in public and fight there in front of the cameras. Aizawa would be there, and so would many other heroes just in case he started getting overwhelmed. But that was all for naught now. A hidden enemy is the worst kind of enemy, Kaminari complained, and at that moment his eyes widened in shock as outside of his window a dark water-like substance appeared and a hand came out of it. Kaminari immediately called on his quirk, but instead of that, he didn't even feel electricity as soon as the attack came. His quirk was gone. Boom. Chapter 102. Symbol of Fear. Boom. A huge blast of wind hit the Class 1 dorm. The power was so strong that it obliterated the place, and it felt as if an earthquake hit you. But that didn't go unnoticed as Aizawa, who was in his office, immediately became alert, and together with the other teachers went towards the blast. Aizawa was worried about this, but Vlad King reassured him. Don't worry, your students are strong, no matter what happens. He didn't say anything, and just kept running towards where the students were. This was a sneak attack of the highest caliber. It would kill even top pro heroes if it hit them. Heh, Kaminari is there, so don't worry, said Midnight smirking. I would feel sorry for the attacker instead. Stop saying stupid things to comfort me, intervened Aizawa. If someone attacked, then they would know about Kaminari and how to take care of him. See, come on now. It could be just another dumb, overconfident villain, said Present Mike. He could tell that his friend was flustered even if he acted like this. He is worried about them and isn't as calm as he seems. As I said, there is no need to reassure me, yelled out Aizawa. The villain was able to pass through our security system. He isn't someone stupid, so keep your mind in reality and concentrate on it. Don't worry uselessly. At the dorm, there was only a giant hole left where the school used to be. All for One was up there, floating midair, looking down on the hole which was covered in dust. His head had recovered somehow. He now had white hair, but still, his eyes were closed. Heh! He chuckled because as the dust cleared out, there was a bloody Kaminari. His wounds were numerous, from small to critical, and his clothes were almost completely ripped off. Long time no see, Kaminari Denki. All for One said the same thing Kaminari had said to him when they first met in Tartarus, at the start of that hellish torture. Ha 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 ha. Kaminari laughed suddenly, till he spits out a mouthful of blood. Damn, haven't you gotten too arrogant, little old man? Though injured and unable to fight back. Once Kaminari looked up at All for One. A feeling of terror enveloped the strongest villain. Kaminari's one open eye looked straight at the man. His classmates who were behind him were all only slightly, but none of them could even speak as a feeling of bloodlust was released from All for One. They couldn't even move a finger, like a frog about to be eaten by a snake. But looking at Kaminari's injured form, his unsteady posture, and almost crumbling form, they realized that he had taken the full brunt of the damage. Bakugo was the first one to come to his senses. Oi, don't fuck around with our Pikachu. Boom. A giant explosion comes out of his palms because unlike when he met All for One the first time, by now he had experience and knew how to deal with this. Kirishima is the second to act. His form became completely jagged and his whole body was under powerful protection. He looked at Bakugo, and there was nothing to be said at the explosion. Hero grabbed him, and since All for One was still covered in the explosion, boom! Bakugo used another explosion, but this time at Kirishima's back. He was propelled so fast that it seemed like a red flash to the normal eye. Bomb! All for One wasn't able to dodge as Kirishima created spikes in his arm, and they sank into the villain's neck, drawing blood and slamming the man on the ground. The whole class was surprised once the two of them did that and inflicted injury on All for One so easily. Of course, the neck injury was healed almost immediately. Even All for One himself was shocked about what just happened. It wasn't because the attack that hit was skillful or strong enough to land and injure him. It was because Kaminari kept looking at him, and for some reason, AFO couldn't move. But he soon understood why he couldn't move. I get it now. I am afraid of Kaminari Denki. It was such a simple thought, but his body shook instinctively just when thinking of the young hero. He was suffering from mental trauma, like an abused child never being able to stand up to his parents even when they become adults. Bakugo, on the other hand, looked at Kaminari and felt annoyed. Not at the lightning hero, but himself. Again, he saved us all again. No attack would be able to hit Kaminari unless he did it to protect us. He is just too fast, concluded Bakugo, clenching his teeth in anger. Rich girl, Froggy, little sticky fuck, Pinky, tape guy, animal beta. Help the phone charger and lay him down carefully. He is injured. Kaminari smiles at Bakugo, and the latter can see that Kaminari couldn't even talk, meaning that his lungs were crushed. Bakugo grimaced at this, but made sure to look forward so no one could see his expression. Fuck. He can't talk because his lungs are probably crushed. He was carefully laid down on the ground, and Mina immediately started crying as she saw his injuries. Minetta's face paled at it too. His ribs. Kaminari's ribs were completely shown as the skin and flesh on his chest were blasted off. Even then, the bones were broken and had pierced his lungs too. Sure shit. Zero was shocked and used his tapes to try and stop the bleeding around Kaminari's arms. Momo created bandages and basic first aid equipment. Though tears came out of her eyes, she had a calm expression. She knew that this is what Kaminari would say. One must be calm, no matter the situation. She recited his words in her mind. But, Kaminari, it's hard to be calm in a situation like this. Suddenly, she felt a hand touch her face. It was Kaminari, and he had a reassuring smile, while also giving everyone else a thumbs up. Kaminari POV. Momo's thighs feel so good to lay my head on. I see that they are nervous and terrified of it. It feels nice. But though, all for one taking away my quirk like that was quite surprising. He just turned it off so casually. Oh well, there is nothing to worry about. My quirk is nothing special without me, but I am still strong without my quirk. Also, I was already fully healed, but using in combination with I had healed all the damage I initially suffered when I took All for One's attack head-on, using my body as a shield. Maybe not the best decision, since I did almost die and I would have if I didn't protect my brain. I actually couldn't use my quirk to speed up my thoughts, so it was more of an instinctive decision to move that way. Who would have thought a coward like me would do something like that? But it was the best decision, because if I hadn't taken that initial blast, undoubtedly most of the 1A students would be dead by now. One for All looked at me. Of course he wasn't looking at me but sensing my location. Still, his body shook instinctively. No matter who you are, once torture has been put on you, someone can easily be made to fear me more than God. Chapter 103. Instinctual Fear. Ha ha ha. All for One laughed out loudly as he came to a realization. Damn. Why am I reacting like this to an injured kid? I must admit, Kaminari Denki, you are one of the scariest people I have ever met. But you are still human. Shut it, you 2-bit villain, yelled Bakugo. He had an on-guard posture and Kirishima also was on full-on guard. The others had also come to their senses too, and Todoroki created huge pillars of ice that came out of the ground and formed a wall around us. Zero uses his tapes to pull Kirishima into our side of the barrier. Boom! But it didn't last long as All for One shot some blasts that easily destroyed the ice pillars. Nice, as expected of Endeavor's son, he said, a smirk on his face. Even though he easily destroyed the wall of ice, he acted like it was impressive. So how about it? I will let everyone live if you give Kaminari to me right now. He is not as good of a guy as you think. Sounds like a fair deal, right? Sure, said Bakugo without missing a beat. He pointed at the injured Kaminari and said, Go and take him.
Oi.
Bakugo, what the hell do you think you are doing? Zero was mad at him, and the rest of the class, even the terrified Mineta whose legs were shaking, came forward and they all formed a barrier around Kaminari. All for One had a smile as he levitated forward, and as he got close to Bakugo who was at the front, his eyes shadowed and he was unreadable. Boom! Suddenly a huge explosion engulfed All for One, but as the dust cleared he didn't have a scratch on him as a yellow barrier surrounded him. Bakugo was annoyed. He had planned for All for One to get close to him and then he would be blown away. He planned to have All for One drop his guard down even slightly. He knew just how strong the villain that they were facing was, and since Kaminari was injured their chances of dealing with someone like this are quite low, and there are even possibilities that some of them could lose their quirks. If only Kaminari was healed up, then we would have a decent chance at winning this fight. He knew his chances of winning were small, but he can't give up now because he wants to be a hero after all. Still, as he charges towards All for One, Fwish! The villain's fingers elongate and like spikes go to pierce Bakugo's body. But he uses his explosions to maneuver himself out of the way, while Mineta throws his sticky balls toward the spiky whip-like fingers, locking them in place as Kirishima jumps up and grabs into them and gets himself stuck. Ha ha ha, he laughed, still in his unbreakable form. Come on now, try retracting your fingers, potato head. I will bash your face in. All for One didn't say anything to Kirishima's provocations. Instead, he just moved his other hand and pointed it behind him. A wall of earth morphs from the ground, and in that instant, from the sky, a couple of rockets appear. Boom! They crash into the earth wall, obliterating the structure and engulfing One for All in the explosion too. Villain, step down and surrender, or we will be forced to take drastic measures. A robotic voice rang through the school grounds. The dust cleared out and AFO is healthy as a fiddle. There was not even a scratch on him. He smirked as he heard the robotic voice. Well, you can come and try to stop me, heroes. Though as he said that, even more rockets come out of the clouds. How troublesome. That was his only comment on the situation, as he looked at Kirishima and the latter paled, guessing what the villain was about to do. Just like he predicted, All for One moved his elongated fingers and put Kirishima in front of the explosions. Zero used this split moment to wrap All for One in bandages and swing the villain aground. But the charade doesn't last long, as All for One said. Ha 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 ha, you guys are quite amusing dash. But the man's words got stuck in his throat as the rockets maneuvered around Kirishima and directly went for All for One. Boom! Before the explosion could settle down, many helicopters descended from above the clouds. Also strangely, they were all quiet in their movements due to a silencing quirk being applied to them. Nizu was in one of the helicopters, and he kept giving orders and several coordinates at where to shoot the missiles. It was an aerial attack that All for One could do nothing about, as not only were they too far away for anything, but also quirk users were amongst them with a myriad of different quirks that are suited for military purposes. That was when Kaminari pulled his body up. He looked more like a zombie than a normal living human. His hunched back, ripped-off clothes, and the missing flesh in his chest made him seem like an already dead man. Don't move, or you could injure yourself beyond repair, yelled out Momo in worry. She was too afraid to even stop him, as he might be killed by a simple touch. Kaminari's figure was simply too pitiful from what everyone else was used to seeing. His confident back, which once inspired confidence to the ones behind him, making him seem like an unbeatable force. But now, seeing all of this, everyone understood that at the end of the day, Kaminari too was just another human. Without his electrification quirk, he wasn't anywhere near strong enough to fight All for One 1v1, even if he was in top condition. He had no dreams of grandeur, nor will he throw his life away. Sometimes, a hero has to show off, mumbled Kaminari. Only those close to him could hear it, and even All for One, who was confident, suddenly felt a chill down his spine. The villain didn't understand why he was suddenly all afraid again. Even though he knew that Kaminari was now just a quirkless and injured teen, Kaminari noticed that All for One was feeling scared, and the trauma from his torture back in prison was flaring up. Kaminari was nowhere near nice enough to let something like this go unused. Well, it seems like our villain lost its grip after seeing that his sneak attack victim was less injured than he thought. He mocked All for One, seemingly being full of confidence even if he seemed like a dead man walking. The villain felt his heart start beating faster, and his body grew weak as a feeling of nausea surrounded his being. It wasn't any physical attack. None of the students could reach him even if they tried. Plus, even they were shocked as they noticed how scared All for One seemed to be. Kaminari was half dead, but just by standing up, he stopped a villain that seemed to be able to easily curb stomp them all. You damn bastard! The usually calm and cool-headed All for One screamed to the top of his lungs. Suddenly a storm seemed to gather about, as if the place was suddenly hit by a tornado. Debris flew everywhere, and the center of the stop was all gathered at All for One's palm. Die, you brat! Chapter 104. A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Everyone else was shocked. The enormous amount of gathered power in All for One's hand was like a natural catastrophe being compressed. It could easily wipe out the whole Udata grounds. Something quite big, as it also had small artificial towns and forests for training. All for One was about to attack when suddenly, fwash, everything goes away. The power that he was fathering dissipated and shot into the sky, turning into a harmless wind. Also, as he was floating mid-air, suddenly he started falling and landed heavily on the ground. Confusion hits everyone as they see this happening, except Kaminari, who had a smirk on his face. What a dumbass. He couldn't even see when I was buying for time. Kaminari never had plans of great grandeur and tried to save everyone. Since he had lost his main source of power, the electrification quirk was gone. He took the full force of the attack initially because he knew that he could survive, and he also knew that his classmates would be able to buy some time, even if they had to use their lives to do so. He truly considered everyone of Class 1A as friends, but in no way will he ever risk his life for them. Even Momo was not an exception to this. Kaminari liked money, but his life is more precious. At this time, Aizawa and the other teachers had arrived. I have him within eyesight, declared Aizawa. His eyes locked on All for One. Cementos nodded. I hardened the ground where he fell so there wouldn't be any dust to obstruct your view. Tisich, I am about to mess up the guy who had the guts to attack you. Vlad King was also angry and cracked his knuckles. Midnight snickers at that and pulled on her clothes a little to rip them off, making her spew out some purple gas towards All for One. The battle was already decided as soon as Aizawa had caught sight of the assailant. Nizu, on the other hand, was in the helicopter. Looking down at all that was happening, he never let his guard down and waited. He knew that All for One was obviously dangerous, but what he knew even better was that the man never fought alone. Suddenly the sky darkened and everyone looked up to see a giant black whale floating in the sky. For a creature of the sea, flying in the sky looked quite majestic. But there was no time to admire it, as everyone soon realized what it was. The whale's size was enormous, and it had a quirk that allowed it to float, so if Aizawa used his quirk on it, then it would just come down and crush everyone below it. Kaminari's eyes widened in shock at this. Everyone, be careful, it isn't a whale, it's a Nomu. As soon as he said that, All for One started laughing. Ha ha ha. I would expect anything less from you, Kaminari Denki, able to realize the identity of the high-end whale Nomu in an instant. The villain truly thought very highly of Kaminari. He was someone who could see the world in a way that no one else could. It seemed almost as if he could see the future. Come on now, Eraser, All for One croaked in pain. His body starting to break down due to not having access to his healing quirks. He was after all over 100 years old with a workout body. You either let me go and save all those people in here by canceling the usage of the whale's main quirk, or you kill me here with everyone in UA. A simple choice, or so it would seem. Only two alternatives. But Kaminari didn't like either of them. A frown was apparent on his face. Kaminari POV, there was something going on here that I am not seeing. I felt like something was missing. Like part of a missing puzzle. What is it? Something obvious. Wait. Where were Shigaraki and the other high-end Nomu? If All for One decided to attack this place, then where the hell are the others? I looked at the whale once more. If it's a Nomu, then the floating quirk wouldn't be the only one of the quirks that it owns. So how? Are they inside the whale ready for a surprise attack? Maybe underground? Or was one of us already impersonated by Toga, and she is just waiting for the opening to attack me? No, I must be calm and analyze the situation even more. She being here would be a risk, because just one look from Aizawa would be able to reveal her. Also, since he is a teacher, it was not uncommon to cancel the quirks of some students during training. So who was the traitor? Looking amongst the students, all of them were worried. Is it a teacher instead? No, impersonating a teacher would be even harder because they have to teach classes and such. But since Toga is like a mad dog, she is easy to predict. Who does she know most from the people currently here? Izuku? No, he trained and used his quirk quite a lot recently, so it wasn't him. So there was only one other person left. I looked at the back of the student group and saw the brown-haired girl looking at the sky worryingly. Though my body was in perfect shape due to my healing, I still couldn't act like I was fully healed. So instead I pointed at Ochako and yelled out,
Toga.
Everyone be careful. Quickly capture her. Huh. Everyone was confused at that. Ochako even made a small pebble float. I can use my quirk. Kaminari, Kurin must be mistaken due to his head injuries. Ah, that bitch. How annoying. Plus, almost everyone is on her side now since she showed her quirk. Oh, and how do you know that Toga can't use your quirk once she has copied it? Well, she seemed nervous for a split second when Izuku came in and interrupted. Kaminari-san, don't worry, trust me, she is not an enemy. The others were relieved at that and breathed a sigh of relief. This loser Deku, does he think that just because he said so, I would trust his judgment?
No.
The guy has terrible judgments and no will to pull through with things. He wasn't willing to kill Shigaraki even after the man destroyed a whole city and almost killed his friends countless times. So now, I would never trust the judgment of Deku. This is a delicate game that I am playing, and if Deku keeps getting in the way, then I will have to kill him. I noticed him wincing as soon as I thought about that. Danger Sense was quite the useful quirk. Even if I had no chance of having it, I wanted it badly. Still, though, how do I solve this issue? Humans naturally don't want to believe when they hear the worst kind of news, because if Toga had impersonated Ochako, then what happened to the real Ochako? It was not a hard puzzle to solve, but no one wanted to even think of the possibility. Well, they need to wake up from that dream, because this was about to become a nightmare. Chapter 105, Imposter. Kaminari looked at Ochako, and seeing her so calm made him even more sure that she was an imposter. But he kept calm and instead asked her, "So, tell me about the move that we were working on together, Ochako. What was it? Answer this so you can appease my suspicion." She looked confused and had a thoughtful look before answering. "I don't think we were working on a special attack together." The others breathed a sigh of relief at that. They too knew that it was so since me and Ochako never talked about a special move with him. But Kaminari now knew for a fact that Ochako wasn't being truthful. He knew that the girl had a crush on him and would always fidget and blush a little when they were talking. Now, though, she was completely calm. Others didn't seem to notice anything strange in her behavior. So he too decided to keep quiet. Kaminari then shook his head and sighed. "Oh, sorry about that then. I am just currently on edge." He winced as he fell on his knees and leaned back on the ground. His eyes closed as he softly muttered, I can't hold on anymore. I feel so sleepy. Lost too much blood. I hope that instead of strong villains, some other useless losers like Twice who only puts his comrades at risk comes." Kaminari's body was still heavily injured, at least from the other's perspective, and even his movements until now had been nothing short of a miracle. But as soon as he laid down on the ground before anyone could even react, Ochako jumped towards his downed body in the blink of an eye, sneakily pulling out a knife as a malicious smirk appeared on her face. "D. You evil bastard," she yelled out before swinging down. Kaminari only smirked and lazily opened his eyes. Boom! Bakugo's explosion rings out and it engulfs Ochako. Momo also immediately shoots a net gun at the girl while Koda had some birds and insects keep an eye on Ochako, so she didn't escape. "TCH losers," said Bakugo while looking at Class 1A, but he was staring more intently at Izuku. "You think Sparky would be wrong about something like this? You bastards need to get your eyes checked. Dumbass can't even notice when their friend is being impersonated." The others looked down in shame. Kaminari by now had fallen asleep and seemed half dead already. His face was pale as if he had no blood in him. Ochako then appeared again, but this time as her appearance slipped away like slime and Toga appeared. She was a little roughed up by the explosion. But what bothered her was Kaminari just laying down on the ground casually even after he had insulted her comrades, the one that he himself had killed. Due to all of that, Toga had a hateful look as she looked at Kaminari, who seemed so relaxed. That didn't last long though, as she was easily apprehended by Todoroki. "Where is the real Ochako?" asked Mina in shock. Now that their worries had hit them straight in the head, there was no avoiding them. They all were worried about Ochako and their minds went to the worst possible outcomes, at where she could have already been killed by Toga. Kaminari POV, how tiring. Now I need to stay quiet for a bit and be out of the fight. Currently All For One knows that my chances of surviving are pretty big due to the metamorphosis quirk that he gave me. But he had no idea that I also have the overhaul quirk. I could heal myself and be back in top shape in an instant. Though as far as anyone else was concerned, I am down for this fight. I open my eyes lightly and look up at the whale whose stomach opens, revealing a group of very dangerous villains. Amongst them was Gigantomachia, who acted as the shield as they all jumped down. But the villains stayed on the giant monster's back as it fell, plummeting towards Aizawa. This was it. In this split second, everything will be decided. Tamura, Spinner, and many high-end Nomus looked at my dawn form and smiled. Ha 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 ha, I won this, Kaminari Denki, said All for One as he looked at me. Everyone else found it strange that even in this situation he was so obsessed with overcoming me. The one students look at me worriedly. Is everyone okay? Kendo's voice rings through the field, meaning that Class 1B arrived now too, and they were fully prepared in their hero costumes. For the first time, I don't hear Monoma make one of his annoying claims. He just looked at me with a strange look. Currently, I am in a very vulnerable position, so I am kind of suspicious of everyone. Even Izuku, the one guy who would never side with All for One. I am keeping tabs on him in case of a betrayal. Suddenly the ground below me hardened, meaning that Cementos was using his quirk, and the man did so by creating a shield all around us. Momo created a power suit that looked straight out of a sci-fi movie, like a dark red Iron Man armor. We might have been inspired by movies when coming up with her special moves. But she wasn't done as she made another flamethrower-looking weapon that she flies around Cementos' shelter and shoots straight in the air towards Gigantomachia. A purple cloud of fume shoots towards the villains. Heh, that is my girl. She immediately knew how to handle an enemy like Gigantomachia. Just use poison. Lethal amounts of inhaled poison. No matter what, the giant thing was still a living creature, and its system worked bad against certain chemicals. It just needed bigger doses. Everyone, this won't stop them, yelled out Cementos in panic. So run away. It was true. No way would just a wall of cement be able to handle Gigantomachia bashing in. Everyone got ready to run, and Kirishima came to pick me up. As his hand extended towards me, my own moved like a snake and grabbed his wrist. Kaminari, you are awake? He seemed shocked by it. Leave me here. I told him simply. Don't mess around now. I came to pick you up. Don't worry though, I will be able to get us both out of here. Ijiro reassured me with a confident smile. He didn't understand my plans at all, but even then I couldn't tell him the reason why he should leave me alone. He trusted me, but not enough to leave me alone in a situation like this. Ijiro, I called him by name, trying to convey just how serious I was about this situation. You are the unbreakable hero, right? Then can you handle the smashing of Gigantomachia? Can you protect me if I decided to stay here? He looked at me like I was crazy, but in the end, he smiled nervously. Of course I can. Just say the word and I will do it. Good, I smirked. I have a plan that will allow us to deal with all the villains. Just trust me on this. Chapter 106, Divine Gift. Kirishima looked up at the cement barrier that cast a veil of shadow all over them. Honestly, he didn't know if his body could handle that amount of damage, but he couldn't say no to Kaminari when he seemed worse for wear and half dead. Ever since he could remember, Kaminari had always been the image of excellence. It wasn't his electricity quirk that made him special, no, it was everything else. But even to this day, Kirishima remembers how Kaminari helped him become a hero just when he was about to give up. Hey, Kaminari, do you think I can become a hero? Asked Kirishima, the same question that he had asked just before they started Udate. It seemed like an eternity ago now. Kaminari smiled. No, you are already a hero, Kirishima. No need to doubt yourself anymore. As long as you believe that you can do it, then your body will follow. Amongst the dust, All for One rose once again as Aizawa and the others had gone away. In the panic, not noticing that Ijiro and Kaminari had stayed behind. The villain looked at them and Ijiro was fully on guard. All for One dusts himself off and cracks his neck. Oi, red hair boy. How about you give me your friend and I will let you live? AFO smirked, looking at Kaminari's down form. He felt ecstasy at the thought of crushing what he considered to be his greatest enemy. You are not getting past me, yelled Ijiro, ready to tank any attack that the villain might make. I am scared, but it doesn't matter. I trust Kaminari and whatever plan he has. He will do it, even if it seems impossible. Kaminari, on the other hand, smirked at this and got us casually, As usual, his haggard appearance made even All for One terrified. What a monstrous kid. He has no quirk and is half dead. How the hell is he even alive and still getting up? AFO couldn't handle the situation. It felt like he was looking at a demon. I must kill this young man right here, or I won't be able to sleep for the rest of my life. Even while he looked at Kaminari, the villain's mind was in shambles. He no longer saw just a yellow-haired kid. Instead, the figure was covered in darkness with two red lights at where his eyes should be. I have to kill you, yelled out AFO as he charged. Fwish! Ijiro had no time to react as he was bashed aside, and even though the red-haired hero's defense was not broken, he was still thrown quite far away. Just like so, AFO had grabbed Kaminari by the throat and lifted him. Time to die, kid. Kaminari, on the other hand, touched the villain's hand and smirked. You are quite stupid, aren't you? A lifetime of power has made you blind to how the weak fight. Instantly, lightning started leaking out of AFO's body. What? The man was shocked by it. The electrification quirk was self-activating forcefully. Also at the same time, the villain started hearing Kaminari's voice inside his head. A quirk is part of someone's body, said the strange whispery voice. I was already inside of you ever since that time, slowly driving you mad. You never stood a chance, old man. This was one of the weaknesses of the All-for-One quirk, because while it can still steal quirks, it also gets a part of their consciousness. Usually people would give their quirks to AFO or they would be stolen, but even then the villain was careful what quirks he would keep active inside of himself. But he overlooked one thing, and that was Kaminari, while his quirk was powerful even in its initial speed-enhancing developments. The quirk itself was a representation of its user. Kaminari had put countless hours of training on his quirk, and just because it was outside of his body, it didn't mean that it still wasn't his quirk that was there. That combined with the torture that AFO had been under, both mental and physical, had broken him. Adding on a part of Kaminari's consciousness inside of his mind was the breaking point. You thought it was all your free will, didn't you? Asked Kaminari, smirking. From the very beginning, it wasn't you that wanted to hunt me down. It was my quirk wanting to come back to its true owner. You already were my puppet, old man. So why don't we make that a little more official? Sparks come out of Kaminari's hands as they are both touching One for All and his face. Boom! That was when Gigantomachia broke through the cement barrier and crashed down in the ground. It destroyed everything around it. Just the wind created from the landing was able to throw Ijiro even further away while he tried to reach Kaminari. Damn it! Why can't I even listen to such a simple request from someone who saved me? Thought Ijiro shamefully as he was blown away. But none of the villains paid any attention to that. Hell yeah. Time to roll out. Yelled out one of the high-end Nomu, now having a clear speech pattern, showing the way that it had evolved now. Sensei? Shigaraki looked around, feeling something amiss. But even he couldn't see clearly due to the heavy dust around. Instead, he used some sensing quirk and determined that there was one living in the vicinity. He waved his hand and a strong wind was created from it, clearing all of the dust away. There he saw his teacher. His suit was ruined and he was bleeding from everywhere, but Shigaraki felt uneasy while looking at him. Master! Gigantomachia, on the other hand, didn't think too much and charged towards his master while tears pulled out of his eyes. Everyone else jumped off his back as he did so. The ground shook with every rushed step the creature took. Spinner was annoyed at this. What a self-centered idiot. When Gigantomachia was about to reach All for One, Shigaraki suddenly had an epiphany and his eyes widened in shock. Wait, Gigantomachia, stop. But the giant of a man didn't listen. Only his master mattered to him now, and he was in front of him. All for One smiled as he looked at the charging beast. Gigantomachia, long time no see. He then extended his hand and touched the creature's hand. First, the giant's body popped like a balloon filled with flesh and guts. Shigaraki looked at his sensei and narrowed his eyes in suspicion. You are not sensei, he acclaimed. All for One smirked at that. Really? I thought that I made a pretty good impression of him. Who are you? Asked a new voice, coming out of one of the high-end no-news with a giant mouth. Bahahahaha. AFO laughed. He sounded so joyful, like a kid who just got told that he could eat all the candy that he wanted. Divine gifts do not come from a higher power, AFO said as his body started morphing, yellow hair spurting in his bald head, and his burned face started morphing into a young man with yellow eyes. Divine gifts come from our own mind. The body morphed into Kaminari, and he even had a suit on, like the ones that All for One usually wore. He then pointed his hand at Shigaraki. I just got this power, but let me show you the difference between us. Shigaraki-chan. Chapter 107. Difference in Knowledge. As he pointed his hand towards Shigaraki, he smirked. Let's see the difference in our knowledge. Wind was gathered in his hand, and he created 2 mini-storm tornadoes which each moved in the opposite direction of the other. This created something unnatural as a storm itself seemed to appear in Kaminari's hand. Boom, in an instant, a real lightning bolt was shot towards Shigaraki. He couldn't even dodge due to the speed and was hit head-on. But the attack didn't seem too effective, only some burned skin which didn't take long to heal. Oi, what did you do to Sensei? Asked Shigaraki once more, his eyes now shadowed by his hair. Kaminari smirked at it. Well, that should be pretty obvious. He was excited to fight currently because what he just used was a true lightning bolt. Something that held around 1 billion volts in it. I knew it. Right now I just used a wind manipulation quirk to create a lightning bolt through my knowledge of physics and my new quirks. He thought excitedly, once again. Just like when he learned how to control the electric power outside of his body, he felt like the future had limitless power. Everyone, buzz off. You are no match for the man in front of us right now. Go and fight some heroes. Have 3 high-end Nomu stay behind his cover, said Shigaraki as he charged forward. 3 of the 10 Nomu also stayed with him, but they didn't interfere in the battle. The Nomu, though strong, every one of them would be countered by Kaminari's extreme speed. Others heroes would hesitate to kill even when fighting against Nomus. But Kaminari is different. He killed twice and Dabi without a second thought. Concluded Shigaraki. He knew that in this fight, only one of them would walk alive today. I will be the one to win. I am willing to admit to you, Kaminari Denki, you are a terrifying creature, but even you won't be able to use your newfound quirks better than me. You sure about that? Asked Kaminari as the wind started picking up around him. Crunch. Suddenly Shigaraki's body twisted, the center of the twist being in his stomach as if a black hole had appeared in it. Cough, he spits out a huge glob of blood, his organs immediately being filled with air and burst in an instant. This ruptured his organs, causing disastrous internal damage, way more than any normal attack from the outside could have caused. This is the same with both of you. All for One also never really learned his new quirks. He never trained them. To him, they were just tools that he could use and combine for stronger attack power. Explained Kaminari as his arms bulked up and rotated. Kaminari combined the quirks all in his arms, and they turned dark with red veins in them. Fwish, in an instant, he disappeared from Shigaraki's view and appeared behind the man, ready to bash his head in. But suddenly an array of knives aimed at Kaminari's vital points were thrown at him. He can easily handle them, but he decided to dodge just in case they had some unknown dangerous aspects to them. Kaminari knew how the weak fought, and he didn't want to fall prey to their attacks. Losing his life now because of some unfounded arrogance would be stupid in his opinion. Unlike All for One and Shigaraki, I will never make their mistakes. He concluded as he looked towards the one who threw the knife projectiles and saw someone he was very familiar with. Otoga-chan, how nice of you to come here. Did you miss me? Want to see another of your friends die now? Shigaraki immediately noticed the tone Kaminari was using to irrigate Toga, who was angry, frustrated, and generally is not in a good mood. He knew just how much the girl hated the lightning hero. She had broken her wrists to escape the handcuffs, just so she could kill Kaminari by herself. But the AFO successor also knew just how cruel Kaminari could be, so he immediately rushed towards Toga, but the hero also had done the same. Knowing that he couldn't match his opponent in speed, Shigaraki had activated one of the best quirks in his possession, the quirk of a previous hero who was a speed type, which now combined with Shigaraki's body had evolved into a whole other level of speed quirk. This was Shigaraki's measure on how to fight Kaminari head-on. In that instant he sped up, the world froze around him. It seemed as if time itself had stopped. Though Kaminari too saw this, and for the first time in his new life, someone could keep up with his maximum speed and run by his side. "Quite the nice quirk you have there," complimented Kaminari, not minding that there was a quirk that could keep with his speed. Why wasn't he bothered? It was because he already saw the quirk as his own. Punches, kicks, jabs, elbow hits, and many more moves were exchanged between the two of them. Though Kaminari had a slight advantage, Shigaraki was still able to keep up with his counterpart, mostly due to the regeneration. Though the latter didn't want to just fight his enemy, he had to save Toga from being killed. Shigaraki grimaced at this. Usually, the heroes are the ones fighting in a disadvantageous situation where they don't even try to go for the kill. But Kaminari was different. He went for nothing else but a kill hit. There were no remorse, nor any mercy, only cold and logical killing hits. If he was like any other hero, then Shigaraki would be right to assume that with new powers Kaminari wouldn't be able to defeat him, but sadly, he knew more about the villain than he knew about himself. Every time Shigaraki tried to touch the ground with his hands, Kaminari would stop him and then shoot some at Toga, who seemed to be frozen in time from their perspective. But AFO's successor shoots some lightning from his fingertips, stopping the lethal bone bullets and then shooting a beam-like energy out of his mouth and straight at his opponent. Sadly for him, though, Kaminari had already foreseen this and gone through the movements to dodge even before the attack came. Using a type of size manipulation quirk, he made himself small like a kid, and due to that he also elongated his legs, making them taller. He looked like some kind of deformed person, but his speed increased, however slightly. It was enough to overtake Shigaraki and give him a chance for a true critical hit on Toga. But as his claws were about to dig into Toga's flesh, Shigaraki saw this and unconsciously activated and quirks which helped him for 1 split second surpass Kaminari's speed. Appearing before the teen himself and kicking him in the stomach, Kaminari's body flew away, but he still held a smile on his face. Immediately Shigaraki turned around in shock and saw that Toga had a spike through her head. He turned back towards his opponent, but Kaminari had already disappeared from his senses. He had just used the same technique as Toga to erase his presence. A karate chop lands on Shigaraki's unexpected neck, breaking the fragile bone in an instant and having the villain's body fly off like a rag doll, hitting the ground multiple times before it stopped. Suddenly Toga's dead body dissipates and shows that she was alive all along. Kaminari didn't have a chance to kill Toga previously, but he did now. Easily his hand cut through the air like a sword and Toga's head flew off her neck before she even knew what was going on. Kaminari had used a quirk, but instead of crudely using it to control his opponent, he used it to manipulate his opponent's perception and fear, causing Shigaraki's mind to create the illusion itself. He wasn't forcing anything. His opponent's mind did all of the work. Mind manipulation quirks can be used in many ways when they are in his possession. Shigaraki saw the scene of Toga's death and an enraged roar came out of his throat, his look filled with absolute hate while gazing at his merciless opponent. He felt his heart shatter and a heavy feeling settle over it. He crouched down in emotional pain as his neck healed. The villain's hands were both touching the ground now. "You took everything that I love from me, the people I considered comrades. So I will do the same to you." Below his hand the earth itself starts cracking and turns gray as if it was dying. This signified that Shigaraki had started to use his and was planning to destroy the whole U.A Academy and the city beyond it together with everyone who lived there.
"Du Bastard!"
yelled out Shigaraki. Chapter 108. Hi. Kaminari POV. The ground started withering away, but I stood my ground and crouched down. Immediately I can sense the boundless iron sand all around me. Manipulation of a huge part of it would usually leave me drained like the time when I did with Momo's father. Back then I asked for a taxi to go back to the dorms because I truly had very little energy left. But since I got all for one, everything has changed. Boom! A huge bungle of dark iron sand came from the ground. It immediately lifted Shigaraki and a huge part of the ground around him. The man's decaying quirk was powerful and could destroy cities, but sand-like separated things like water or iron sand can easily slow the spread of his decay quirk and even stop it. Too bad for him. I was just the worst kind of opponent he could pick. That was all there was to it, and I know just how careful one must be when fighting opponents who can potentially counter my quirk. Fwish. Suddenly, Shigaraki threw some rocks at breakneck speed, and I dodged them by stepping to the side. But once I sensed that they didn't touch the ground, I turned backward and used my hand to block them as they were about to hit my chest. Instantly, my hand started decaying. So I touched my shoulder with my other hand and used overhaul on the whole arm, disassembling it in a burst of blood. That was annoying, and even as my arm regenerated and another one took its place, I couldn't help but wince a little in annoyance. With this regenerated hand, now I couldn't use overhaul any longer. Because I didn't actually have the quirk in me, just the quirk factor in those original hands made it possible to use. I am stealing the whole quirk of Shisaki after this fight. Heh, how does your arm decaying your arm feel like? Asked Shigaraki with a smile on his face. His dry lips made him look even uglier than usual. How does everyone in your team and pretty Toga-chan dying in front of you feel like? I retorted back, clearly. That affected the man as he stopped smiling. Well, an angry opponent is an easy one to deal with. So with that in mind, I decided to edge him on even more. Heh, don't try and mock me again, you loser who couldn't even protect his loved ones even as they died in front of him. You are nothing but a cowardly and useless young man. Just like your father said. That last part seemed to push him past his breaking point, and like a wild beast he jumped off the iron sand platform and charged at me. Fwish. Instantly I sneakily made a wind blade around me. Due to it being invisible, Shigaraki, who wasn't of his sane mind, charged right through, and one of his arms flew in the air. Grrr, he growled at me, and didn't stop as his hand regenerated back, and this time it also enlarged into a huge fist with crews running through it. Big Bang Fist, Screw-like Bones, Air Cannon. Those were the three quirks that he had combined, and with his quirk he was able to speed himself enough to hit me in the stomach. Boom. I could feel the insides of my torso crunch together and my bones break as I crashed through multiple concrete, boulder-like objects. General POV Shigaraki breathed heavily as his arm returned to normal. His eyes never left the cloud of sand which covered the place Kaminari had crashed through. The villain's eyes widened as he saw Kaminari casually walk out of it. Is that all? He asked while looking at Shigaraki with a disappointed look. I guess I overestimated you. The villain was confused for a second, but that didn't last long as all of the veins in his body burst at the same time. His heart also exploded and the brain suffered damage too, causing Shigaraki to fall to his knees and plummet face first into the ground. Kaminari dusts off his clothes and sighs in disappointment. Shigaraki had combined 4 quirks, and he had wanted to see just how strong the villain was during anger. But in the end, Kaminari ended up disappointed. Amongst the quirks that Shigaraki used was, but he just used to create a blast. At the same time as he got hit, Kaminari had used to shoot very minuscule and unnoticeable oxygen in Shigaraki's vein and waited till it traveled all over the villain's organs before exploding it. The difference in usage was like night and day. In an instant, Kaminari appeared above Shigaraki and extended his hand towards the villain's face. I will be taking the real all for one. The one Kaminari had was just a copy that AFO had in himself, while the original was in Shigaraki. But before he could touch the villain's head, Shigaraki's body suddenly moved and grabbed for Kaminari's head, planning to instantly decay and kill him. This was his plan all along. Fwish. But out of nowhere, Shigaraki's hands are cut at his elbows and plop on the ground. Was once again used by Kaminari, but now it was turned into an invisible sharp blade. Predictable, concluded Kaminari. You are like a child, using all of your quirks in such a useless and predictable way. Any average person would be able to use them better than you. Simply put, you and your teacher had gotten drunk on a godlike power. You forgot that both of you were human all along. Kaminari touched Shigaraki's head and forcefully extracted the villain's quirks, both the original and. Now let the games begin. He smirked while looking up at the sky. Away he saw 3 Nomu looking at him, and he smirked at them. One of them had a bull head and immediately bowed toward Kaminari as he sent the creature a signal with his. His smirk widened even more at that. The other Nomu, one who had overly muscular legs, and the last one who seemed to have bat-like wings, looked at Kaminari and bowed immediately after. Good, very good. While Kaminari was fighting Shigaraki, many other battles were happening around the U. School too. A high-end Nomu with a womanly figure and hair that moved erratically was targeting Izuku and only him. Bakugo was helping him by blasting the woman away as many tmes as he could, but the woman Nomu would immediately continue her assault after being blown away. They were both getting tired while Nomu seemed to have endless stamina, so the more the battle went on, the more of a disadvantage they were getting into. 6 other high-end Nomu were also fighting against the rest of Class 1A and 1B students, with the teachers joining the fray. Nizu, the rat-like headmaster, looked at the students while he gave orders to the soldiers, using his intelligence to help coordinate attacks against the Nomu where the students would need them. The attacks were with perfect precision, hitting tendons as the Nomu were to jump, their elbow as they were about to punch, and other such shots, weakening and making most of Nomu's attacks ineffective. Though the creatures still healed the next instant, it still bought anyone in danger enough time to dodge. As long as we hold on, soon pro heroes will flood this place and it will be our win, declared the headmaster. Even someone like him couldn't keep his eyes from going towards where the villains had landed. Both AFO and Shigaraki hadn't come here yet, and all cameras or satellite views were cut off, as if an invisible barrier was stopping them. This was a very worrying situation for the headmaster, but also a good thing, since if those 2 villains were here then everyone would be dead by now. I can only hope that young Kaminari and Kirishima are alive. A nice view, isn't it? Asked a voice from right next to the headmaster. What? No one was sitting there? The headmaster looked shockingly to the side and saw a man wearing a purple suit, yellow undershirt. The man had green slicked back hair and clown makeup all over his face, with scars running through his cheeks in the form of a smile. Hello there, I am Joker, nice to meet ya. The man introduced himself in a casual tone while leaning back on the helicopter chair. Chapter 109. The Joker. Nizu immediately became wary of the dangerous clown who had just appeared next to him. Joker pulled out a pair of binoculars and looked down at the students fighting. Nice. You go, explosion boy. Oi, don't just let that boy hit you like that. You stupid Nomu. Fight back. The man wasn't right in the head as he crazily rambled on, encouraging both of the sides, even though due to the high altitude none of them would be able to hear him. Once one of the Nomu got restricted by the combination of Aizawa and Cementos, Joker seemed annoyed by it. Damn it, that was disappointing. Just like that potato head and decay brat. Nizu's body shuddered once he heard those words, the descriptions fitting perfectly for 2 of the villains he knew. But the rat-like creature kept his cool even during such a situation. So why are you here, sir villain? Asked the principal. Outwardly he seemed completely calm, and his fur made it especially challenging to read what he was thinking. But Joker didn't seem to mind it much. Well, in the beginning, I was here to see if I could somehow get the all-for-one quirk by jumping him when he had his guard down. My quirk is called, and allows me to steal 7 quirks. Baha, what better quirk to get than all-for-one? Nizu observes the man quietly, and judging by how happy the man seemed, the principal deduced that Joker had succeeded, which he didn't know if it was good or bad. It could be good because all-for-one was no more and Joker didn't seem like the type who wanted to control the world. But it could also be bad because now all-for-one is in the hands of someone who could probably use it better, and the man's body seemed to be in good shape. Of course, Nizu also took into account that this might all be an elaborate lie, but he doesn't like to delude himself and allow an opening just because he wouldn't like to think of the worst possible outcome. Are the students alive? Asked the principal one last question to the man. Joker smiled at this, his smile almost seeming to split his face in 2 due to how wide it was. You talking about the red hair and yellow hair, right? Yep, they are okay. Mostly okay. I did heal the yellow-haired one too since he was about to die. Oh, I am thankful about that, Nizu responded. An instinctual squeak escaped him as he noticed that something was wrong. He would never usually let his animal instincts take over. Joker smiled. Is a quirk that puts the people around me at ease without them even noticing. Quite nice, isn't it? A quirk made for a hero. Fwash! Suddenly Joker's body disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving just as he came, as if he never was here, to begin with. Nezzy felt a having put form in his stomach due to the new unaccountable alternative. An hour later, the whole incident was over as pro heroes arrived and with overwhelming numbers put down the high-end Nomu, which was a huge part due to Aizawa disabling the Nomu's quirks. and once that happened, it was easy to take them out. Yes, the heroes killed all of the high-end nomes, because the creatures were impossible to subdue, and it would lead to someone's death if they went soft against them. Even Endeavor would have problems with the creatures if he was alone. So the decision was made for the creatures to get a field termination. After that whole ordeal, a rushed press conference was given before every hero in Japan had to keep a lookout for the new villain called Joker. A man mysterious as if he didn't exist to even begin with. Such a dangerous man with a mysterious background and even scarier power. But to the intelligence agencies, even the lack of information on the Joker was information in the end that would hopefully help. Kaminari was healed by the villain, but the rising star hero had fallen into a coma. His friend Kirishima had been heavily injured, but still well enough to move around by the next day. The rest of Class 1A was also well off. Ochako was also found in a closet, and except for the huge amount of blood loss, she was relatively well. The world held their breath at the appearance of this new supervillain Joker, but the man seemed as erratic as his name implied. One day he would be seen robbing a high-profile bank, and the next he would be strolling around the streets without a care in the world. Sometimes the eccentric man would even help the random old lady cross the road every now and then. But the day after that, he went to murder a couple of normal people out of nowhere. He was a man without fear at all, and that was what made him scary. Even All for One was afraid enough to not put himself in the light too much. Due to this, even the government had gotten involved with this affair. High-caliber sniper rifles would be ready to shoot him down the street, but as soon as the trigger was pulled, then they would just see Joker crouch down to tie up his shoelaces, completely dodging the bullet out of pure luck. The villain didn't seem to even retaliate at all, even when he knew who was behind the attacks. It was as if he was waiting for something. At the same time, Kaminari was still in a coma, and he didn't seem to move a muscle. The doctors were getting worried at this a little since the brain scans showed some irregular activity as of lately. Momo, Mina, and some other close friends of Kaminari visited him every day, while others did so once a week. Everyone was busy with their hero duties after all. Mirko also came to visit him. It was midday when no one was here. She was in her hero costume, having just finished her patrol, and left the rest to her sidekicks. The heroine looked at her student, if she could even call him that, since she hadn't taught him anything special. He always seemed to know what to do. Kaminari was in his bed with feeding and breathing tubes all over his body just in case. The medical care was top-notch since Kaminari was an integral part of keeping the casualties zero during the attack. But Mirko was miffed by his sleeping and peaceful face. You know, ever since I first met you, I never really liked you. Then you come in acting as you knew better than me, and I hate to admit it, but you did. I even created my hero agency just because of you. For some strange reason, I wanted to please you and make you proud. Only now do I realize that I was being manipulated. For my own good, of course, but still you did what you did. I want to get angry at you again and not forgive you. But seeing you in a powerless position like this makes me even angrier. Now I could finally punch you in the face when I never could before. Mirko looked at him to see if the young man had any reaction, but he didn't seem to have any. That was such a stupid thing to say, she moaned in frustration. I said it without thinking. It would be embarrassing if you had heard me. She then turned around and started walking away. As she reached the door, "Well, you are well as always, Miss Stripper," jokingly said a voice that Mirko was very familiar with. She turned around and saw Kaminari smiling at her as he sat up and looked her up and down. Mirko was shocked for words, but he didn't seem to mind. Nice body, Teach, even as you were getting up in your age too. She wanted to be happy at his waking, but his irritating words always put a damper on her mood. You damn brat, can't you learn how to talk to a lady? There was a lady here? Kaminari looked around. Where is she? Mirko took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down to not punch him back into a coma. That was when the turned-off TV at the corner of Kaminari's room turned on. Chapter 110, The End. As the TV turned on, a very familiar face popped on. It was the Joker, and unlike his usual antics, he seemed a little happier than usual. Hello there, people of the world. Nice to meet you. If you do or don't know me, then it doesn't matter. What matters is my ambition. He then turned the camera around, and there was a woman tied to a chair. She was struggling to get out but couldn't. His smile seemed to widen even further at the sight of the struggling one woman. Anyway, remember the U.A attack recently? Yeah, I know, big deal and all that. But the villains in there were all taken down and no student casualty was found. Well, I too was there and met a special young man, a very special young man. His eyes showed a madness never seen before as he talked about this young man so enthusiastically. Anyway, now that he has woken up from his beauty sleep, I want to play a little hide and seek with him. Every day I will kidnap one person. For each day that he doesn't find them, that one person will be killed. Pretty good deal, right? P-Dots. I don't care about other heroes. They are fakes and should die in a ditch. So come to me, Flash. Fight me with all you got. And so the TV turned off. This scene was displayed all over Japan, and immediately after that the news sources. Mirko turned around to look for her student, but he wasn't in his hospital bed, having already taken off to go and rescue the woman. Like always, the world is stuck in time and colorless. Though Kaminari, as he ran at top speeds through some remote areas of Tokyo, slowly his form changed, his hair became green and slicked backward, his face became white like paint, and his lips red as if they were tainted with blood. The clothes turned into his purple suit too. This was the clown of chaos, the Joker. Kaminari was the Joker too. This was the decision that had come to. All along he had been choosing the hero side because he knew it was the winning side. But now he could see clearly, there was no reason to not choose both. The villain Joker and the hero Flash will be bound as eternal enemies, always fighting against each other. Every great hero needs their great villain. If someone wanted to do bad to Kaminari and kill him, then they would have to go and get help or team up with Joker. If someone wanted to help take down the villain Joker, then you needed Kaminari's help as he will be the one who fought against him the most. A paradox of safety, that was what he was aiming at, and after all this time, Kaminari came to the true conclusion in his life. No one else mattered. After all, he could see the truth now. By using his and quirks, he would steal quirks and keep copies of the same quirk. He had been in a coma for so long because he needed quirks like Overhaul, Eraser, Body Time Reversal, Ares Quirk, Future Sight, Nighteyes Quirk, Premonition, Mirio's Quirk, and many more quirks. He got rid of things like Air Bullet and such. Since keeping them would only burden his body needlessly, they don't offer any strength that he didn't have already. Kaminari was of course in a coma during this so no one would suspect him. No one knew what happened, or that it even happened at all. The perfect crime had been committed. Finally, he felt the safety that he liked. Years passed on. Kaminari and those of his generation completed U.A, and Joker's presence became something of a terrifying existence as he was as unpredictable as always. The only thing that he seemed to care about was killing the number one hero, Thunder Flash, also known as Kaminari Denki. The young man would always have a whole investigation case every day to try and save the person that Joker would kidnap. But even with all of this, the man would be able to get married, have children, and everything a normal person would be able to do. Even though he was never able to rest any day, people pitied him, especially in cases like when Joker gathered an army of villains to have them attack the man's wedding to Momo Yaoyorozu, a fellow hero, who at one time was able to become number 6 hero before retiring at an early age to take care of her family. Everyone knew that Joker had exposed the identity of each of Kaminari's family member, putting them at risk. Everyone saw the situation for what they thought it was. Joker never wanted the number 1 hero to be happy, though the latter seemed to have found his happiness. Kaminari looked at his young child who just was about to enter U.A. Unlike his younger years, Kaminari's body was different. He was now built like a tank that was shown by his body-tight hero suit. It was yellow-red with a black lightning symbol in his chest part. He had changed it many times and will continue to do so, but no one seemed to mistake him for another hero. His son was taller than when he was at his age and his body was better built. He had his father's iconic hair but his mother's eyes, and Kaminari could easily admit that his son was better looking than he was at that age. But due to the countless quirks that he had, some were cosmetically improving quirks. A person decides their initial opinion of someone in 10 seconds. A good smile and looks will help one immensely. The least I can do to my kids is give them this since I am too selfish to give them any of my power. Contemplated Kaminari. While his children had alternatives to his quirk, he never taught them how to use it to their potential. His son seemed a little nervous at this, which looked awkward since the young man seemed older than he looked. So Kaminari patted his head. Don't worry, Joichiro. I can assure you that you are way above your peers. And, no, it's not that, father. It's just that I am afraid I won't be able to live up to their expectations, gulped Joichiro. Having grown up with the #1 hero wasn't easy for him. Everyone always expected him to be his father's second coming, but he wasn't at all like his father. He was shy, easily flustered, and wasn't good under stressful situations. Something that everyone said that his father excelled at. Kaminari wasn't even a bad father, as he always seemed to find time to cook for his children in the morning and be at their big events even when he was busy with the whole Joker thing. Don't worry about that, son. Just be yourself. You don't have to become like me. Honestly, it would make me feel better if you didn't even become a hero. But I respect your wishes, Joichiro, chimed Kaminari, smiling at his son. But it didn't last long, as an army of reporters were charging at him, but a helicopter suddenly came out of nowhere. Joichiro looked and saw his mother was piloting it. Oh, is that God Flash? Called out by a parent from the crowd. Kaminari used to have many hero names, but everyone knew who he was talking about. That is his wife, Creation Hero. Joichiro took this chance to slip on the crowd entering Ud, and when he accidentally bumped into a small figure. He looked down and saw a yellow-haired girl, the kind of yellow that reminded him of his father. Once he looked at her eyes, he saw that her pupils were yellow with the white of the eye being dark. She was quite well developed, and Joichiro couldn't help the blush that came to his face once he helped her up. Sorry about that. He apologized. You are so small that I didn't see you. The girl smiled at his apology, but frowned at the latter part. I am not even short. You are just too tall. I didn't mean it that way. He stuttered in nervousness and clasped her hands. The girl wasn't amused by this at all. Screw off, rude bastard. Joichiro sighed at this. Once more he had said the wrong thing. His social ability was not very good. If he went by game terms, if his father had a maxed-out charisma stat of 100, then he would be a 1 at best. Thankfully, he had his good looks to thank that his social inability hadn't gotten him in trouble. When he went to his Class 1A, he saw many unfamiliar faces. But some were familiar too, like a green-haired girl with freckles. She was Mikasa Midoriya, the daughter of #2 hero, Deku. They used to be childhood friends, but last she had heard her father had moved to another city, so they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He also noticed that the yellow-haired pretty girl which he bumped on before was here too. Once the teacher came in, it was a rabbit-eared woman. Joichiro immediately recognized her as Aunt Mirko. She used to visit him a lot and sees her as his grandma. Hello, brats. Introduce yourselves. Names, quirks, hopes, and dreams for the future. Mirko wasn't polite to the children in front of her. She looked at Joichiro for some reason and got a haughty look on her face. You go first. Immediately, everyone's attention was on him, and that caused Joichiro even more embarrassment. Why? Yeah, he wasn't confident in his public speaking abilities at all. My name is Joichiro Kaminari. Once everyone heard that last name, everyone took a sharp breath. My quirk is Iron Sand Manipulation. I hope to make a good hero, and my dream for the future is to become a hero my father can be proud of. Mirko looked at this with an exciting look at first, but soon understood that Joichiro was nothing like his father. TCH, this is not at all like Kaminari. I expected everyone to be at his palm by now. I guess he didn't take after his father. Always thought that crazy perfectionist would also try and have his kids grow to become like him. Unlike her expectations, Kaminari never wanted his kids to grow to become like him. The main reason was that he knew just how hard it was to be him, and he wouldn't wish his first childhood on his children. Mirko next looked around and spotted the young yellow-haired girl. Something about her put the semi-retired hero on edge. You are next. My name is Rinashido. My quirk is acidic electrification. It allows me to create a corrosive acid that conducts electricity from my body. My hope for the future is for my mother to tell me who my bastard of a father is, and I only wanted to become a hero because she told me she would tell me if I was able to become one. I don't care about any of this. Then she sat down while the rest of the class looked at her shockingly. Mirko barely contained her smile once she heard that. Kaminari, you sly bastard. This girl sure has your bluntness. So that was why I felt on edge once I looked at her. Bahaha, also a Shido? Isn't that the last name of that pinky hero? Didn't she used to be in the same class as him? She felt a strange sense of excitement rise in her. She couldn't wait for once the family drama unfolded. Joichiro looked at the cute girl and blushed. Her name is Rinashido. She is pretty. Also, her quirk is an electrification kind of quirk, like father's. Kaminari was in his huge mansion and had a smile on his face as he laid down on his pool, looking up at the sun. Yawn, I wonder how my kids are doing at school. Would you like for me to check on them? Asked one of the maids, a jumpy and flushed look on her face. Sakura, stop trying to jump my husband. Momo's voice came as she walked to the pool. She had her black hair let down and her face had matured, becoming prettier while her body seemed to be stuck in time. And even after 3 children, she seemed like a high school girl. Sorry, miss. The maid stammered before running off to do something else. Momo looked at Kaminari, looking at the situation with an amused look on his face, causing his wife to frown. Kaminari, one of these days I'm gonna start thinking that you might start cheating on me. Ha ha ha, he laughed joyfully. Come on now, you know me better than that. I mostly keep them around for the drama. She sighed at her husband's behavior. Plus I have plowed that maid before. I just have to be careful now. I wouldn't want the same thing to happen as it did with Mina. Pondered Kaminari, who now had a child with Mina just from one day. He felt confident in his pull-out game. Thankfully, there are many quirks who can stop something like that repeating itself. Kaminari POV, looking at the forest around, I can't help but smirk as I get the input from my. What a useful quirk. Twice quirk was something alright, even if it was from a clone created from its DNA. Thankfully, in combination with some other quirks, I made sure that there won't be an uprising. Plus, I can live multiple lives at the same time. Though I wanted many things, I don't like sacrificing things like family just because of it. I had sacrificed enough in my first life. This way I can be happy. Already this world had gotten boring. There was no challenge. Even if I didn't have access to my countless quirks, there hadn't been a threat to me. Anyway, finally, I have enough power to break through this world's barrier. I just needed to create a paradox like a time-reversing quirk and time-speeding quirk. I already had Ares' quirk for a long time now. It reverses my body's time, and a certain hero in America could speed up his body's speed, so this was easy to get. I love having access to government files all over the world. Whatever quirk I want, I can just go and have it. I used both of them on my body. Immediately darkness surrounded my form. Fwish. Immediately I flash. Unlike the times where I move so fast, this time it didn't even feel like I was moving. Looking around me, I saw a tunnel. It had many colors, ones that I hadn't even seen before. Oi, what are you doing there? Someone's voice terminated through. I looked to the side and saw a man with dark hair and dull eyes wearing glasses looking straight at me. The first thing I noticed about him was that his glasses was that they weren't prescribed, meaning that the man's vision was perfect. He was only wearing them for aesthetic reasons. I looked at the man and just decided to blitz the man and ran along the tunnel. I don't know this guy at all, but for the first time, the guy was able to keep up with me and seemed to be doing so easily. You are quite fast, ain't you? Asked the man, seemingly not bothered that both of us were moving at speeds faster than light. Who are you? I inquired. The man seemed confused for a second before smirking. He then started speeding up without saying anything. But out of nowhere, a pale hand appeared and patted the man on the shoulder. The pale hand belonged to a man with long white hair and a very enchanting face. What do you want, heroic bastard? Can't you see that I am having some fun here? The glasses man seemed annoyed, but the silver-haired man pointed up, and the man chasing me looked up too. Immediately his eyes shook. Out of curiosity, I looked up too, since from my senses I saw nothing. But after looking up I saw something. Or more correctly, someone. There were thousands, millions, no billions of him spread all over. It was weird how I didn't notice them, as it felt like the whole place was filled with them. The man had long dark hair and cold dark eyes. At first there felt something strangely familiar about him. He had a sad smile on his face as he asked, "When did you get taller than me?" It was so cheesy, such a stupid thing to say when meeting someone, but tears almost fell out of my eyes when I heard that. I finally understood who he was, but I didn't stop at all. Instead, I increased my speed to a level in which each of my steps created miniature dark holes. Fwash! Catch me if you can. I yelled out loudly before flashing over 1,000 times and entering one of the countless dark holes I created. After that, I came upon a liquid-like feeling and looked down to a star. No, that was something else, a world. At least that was what my future sight quirk informed me. It seemed so small that it would fit in my hand, but at the same time it was so big that would expand infinitely. Nothing made sense anymore, the sizes, nor laws of physics obeyed here. I flashed towards it. As I did so, my powers stayed behind before I flashed, and so I blacked out for a split second. Garp-san, here are your grandsons, said a strange voice. You had 2 brats? Asked a hard voice. Ah, so I succeeded. I am in a new world without my powers. Ha 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 ha, now things have started getting interesting again. That's the end of this tale. I appreciate you all for consuming my content and watching the entire series. I love you, and I'll see you in the next series. Peace.